Da 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 dee 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 dee. Hello everyone, how are we all doing today? Ooh, this is all take its time to upload. I'm live. Hey, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Do you know me? Do we know each other ourselves? So, hello Night Ticket everyone. Hello John Shay. Night Ticket everyone. I heard you saying at one point you had 55 questions for today, so I did kind of adjust the topic because I thought, well, if I'm going to have more questions, then I'm going to have less books. I thought that was sensible. Hello Sage. Hello George Newman. Hello Tanya Velica. Hello HMS Verdun. Hello, everyone. That's a conversation going on there. I hope you can all hear me. If you can't, tell me and I'll speak up. Or rather, I'll make the thing louder. I think it's supposed to be on its loudest and its best gain, but you never know. Yeah, nice hearing. Is the RMMV Oceanic a good indication that the 1928 infrastructure upgrade would have been to make British naval infrastructure able to build ships up to 80,000 tons? More than likely. I think, honestly, that was... You have to remember, the infrastructure upgrade for 1916, if it had been put through, would have probably increased the capacity, because remember, the capacity had been increased to ships of roughly 40,000 tons, as presumed in 1912. So, well, 1910, 1912, when they put it through. So 1916 was supposed to be about 60,000 tons, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were planning on roughly 80,000 tons worth of capacity in terms of that. Hello, Stafford. Hello, Carmen Gasberg. Hello, Captain Seaford. So it always helps if you put the questions, if you do put at Dr. Alexander Clark in the chat, because that makes me pick out those questions. Dr. C also works. I tend to manage to spot those. But, yeah. Hello. How are you all doing? The camera is there. The screen which I can check to check my display is there. And the chat is there. So I should be looking towards the camera for most of the time. Hello. But I will occasionally be diving off in that direction to check the screen. Fun times. Because, again, it's working out how I'm going to put this all stuff up. And this poor laptop is being saved by this the system which I now implemented for it. It has certainly extended its capacity somewhat, the dock, but I'm not 100% sure. Hello, Seneca Nero. Hello, Rob Smith. Hello, Budgate89. Hello, DG40. Hello, Bob Fry. Hello, Leslie Mitchell. Hello, Jacqueline Bugluck. Hello, DH89. A happy Sunday to you. My blood has been boiling reading Massey and the great indignities that vindictive Beresford threw against better men than him. Fisher and, to some extent, Scott. Very angry. Yeah, Massey does get into it, and Beresford is an interesting individual. Hello, New York 4472. Hello, RG. Hello, Stephen Richards and HMS Ford. Hello, everyone. Let's see. Ooh, what have we got going on? Hello, Mikey Newman. So, as you notice, I have changed today's topic from sci-fi ships to that's next time. That brew and the brew which is stored, the glass bottles which are down there, are for the wall display when it gets built. Speaking of which, I did have my builder around today. Him and his overseer came around to have a conversation and chat about things. So, we are getting on with these projects. They are going to be happening. It's taking time to get the time to do it, though. Nice, 100,000 tons capacity by World War II. Oh, sugar for the access. It would have certainly been interesting if the British had continued on the things, because if you think about it, if the British had continued upping every 6 years or so, roughly, the capacity of most of their docks to buy 20,000 tons, then if you consider if they managed to do it in 1916, 1922, they'd have been up to 80,000 tons. 1928, they'd have been up to 100,000 tons. 1934, they'd have been up to 120,000 ton ships, etc. That's all theoretical and depending on the still increasing the investment and carry on doing that. But hello, Doctor. Can we see your tribal captain pose on Hyder? I do have the pictures, but they're being saved for a specific video when it comes out, which will be a Christmas special. Seneca, would a battleship or cruiser with only Q turrets be viable in any way, shape, or form? No. No. And no. No. And before you ask, they actually did try it. There are central battery ships where the guns cannot fire forward or aft because of the way the hull's been designed. And they have central battery turrets, and they curl around, and this. Yeah, no. Just no. It's not good. So, good afternoon, I hope you're well today, and glad to see you survived the teenagers yet again. I trust they have all that they're just attached and only slightly bruised egos. They had a good time, and I don't think they have many bruised egos. We mostly try and build them up at this point in the year. It's a case of, I have to say, most of the work I do with teenagers at this time of year, especially when I'm course directing, is orientated around things like teaching them time management skills, teaching them they're not superhuman, and trying to avoid burnout. Most of those kids, they're good kids, they're hardworking, and they will try and work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until they get to their exams, because they are fixated on their exams, are the be-all and end-all of their life, especially the A-level students. That's the ones going for their... Well, most unit students in the UK leave their exams with their 18... their aged 18 exams or A-levels. That see them going off to university or apprenticeship schemes or those things. And I spend a large chunk of my time, trying to explain to them that, yeah, no, if it does go wrong, it's not the worst thing in the world, but also you need to balance your life a bit, and you need to have time, because, and we talk about this, and strange enough, usually the example I give are the admirals from in the late 1930s who work themselves into their early grave. We've talked before about how people could have been trying to kill them or assassinate them, and there is a good possibility of that. But there's also a very high likelihood that those admirals all die, the British admirals all die, because they have been, since roughly 1932, working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, barely taking any holidays, to try and get the Royal Navy ready for World War II. And the Royal Navy manages to do what it does in World War II and survive the way it does in World War II and keep fighting the whole time, no matter what's chucked at it through World War II, largely because of the work of those admirals and those engineers. But they killed themselves to do it. They literally killed themselves to do it. If you look down below, you will find on the description, you will find the new books and you will find the random books. Sci-fi has been moved, mainly because I've got some new sci-fi books coming and I want to read them, include them in it. But also because I want to be ready for the questions. That does sound nice stuff. A breeze in 42-degree heat. Bob Fry, did Graf Spee get more attention than Admiral Scheer because of the River Plate, while Scheer just went about her business? Graf Spee did get more attention because of the way she died, rather than, what she actually accomplished. But Scheer also was used differently than Graf Spee, and it reflected in her relative performance and fame. Hi, Paul Bestwick. If the British acquired the Golden Eagle version of the Sea Eagle, does that give them a viable land attack missile for the early 2000s and beyond? It's not bad. This is better out there, but it's certainly useful. Andrew, how feasible would it be to reach 100,000 plus ton capacity? There'd be some point where practicality versus size hit. The thing is, you have to consider if you're designing a dry dock slipway with the ability to launch 100,000 tons, 120,000 tons. It also has the theoretical capability to be used for building smaller ships, which are far less, more numerous smaller ships. So it can be actually really quite efficient. It all depends on how you're using it. Also, honestly, if you're building a battleship which is 150,000 tons, goodness knows how much armor steel you're using. As if the British had invested in this infrastructure into war years, well, that's what I basically discussed. If they carried on, let's say they'd said not 1916 but 1922, they'd gone round and gone. Right, so we didn't do 1916s. We're going up to 60,000 tons now. And then in 1922, 1928, 80,000 tons. 1934, 100,000 tons. Yeah, that will be the capacity they'd be at by roughly World War II. And would the Great Depression strike so hard? Well, Kamargasberg, possibly, but it would be different. It would be a case of it would still have an impact, but if you're investing in infrastructure, you might be able to mitigate some of its impact. Yeah, Coby 442, 120,000 ships. What would such a beast look like? Massive. I'm Mikey Newman. I sent a second area. What were the most insane ideas tried with ironclads? Oh, honestly, if you want to look at any ideas, you look at the for ironclads. You look at the U.S. Civil War between the Confederates and the Union forces. It gets incredibly interesting. Hi, in struggling. My life went wrong after A levels. Sad. But you can always recover. Where there's life, there's hope. That's a thing I'm firmly believe in. John Marin, could the RN have built the KGV in World War II with triple 16s? Probably not the King George V, because you'd be building a Lion, basically, with triple 16s. So anyway, I had a student in my class who got basically perfect A-level equivalent and then basically only partied and did several other things in Union famous route. Now does manual labour. Well, doing manual labour does not necessarily is not a failure. It's still a good job these days. Any job is good. It's probably not what he was aiming for, though. I would add, secondly, that I hear that one happen far too often, and usually, to my experience, that's because the kids who get the perfect A-levels tend to be the ones who just focus on their A-levels and do nothing else aside, and then when they get to university, they go wild because they suddenly have freedom, and they're basically hothoused up until that point. Do you think a modernised 32 knot N3? We've got the N3 up to 32 knots. How? With helicopter handling facilities replacing some of her rear structure, would have been better fit for the US surface action groups than our. It would have been interesting. Would it have been a better fit? Yeah. Possibly, but nicest way, that's getting onto hypothetical beyond hypothetical. Bug 9, how close do you think we are at the actual war over Taiwan? I'll start getting worried when they stop making pontification statements. When they stop making things which sound like grandiose statements from a banquet, then I get worried. Would the British, if they'd gone with ship-launched Eagles, still have it in service today? Probably not. Not only 1640, 150,000 ton battleships. No wonder you said sci-fi. They'd have been fun. Nice one. The British mass-produced sloops prior to World War II. How mucked up are the U-boats? They're in severe trouble. World War II, the Germans start with 60 U-boats. Now, you have to remember, it's not the U-boats that matter so much, it's their crews, right? So, any losses those boats suffer, which is one of the reasons why they're quite so cautious with them, that stops your ability to train new crews and expand your U-boat arm. So, if you suddenly have more sloops patrolling, I don't know, Scarpa Flow, and Prin's attack doesn't get through, and his U-boat gets sunk, and if you have more convoy protection for the convoys, and you have more sloops, you have more vessels with, let's say, Courageous doing her hunting, etc., and the submarines get sunk, then this is going to have a knock-on impact, as is knock-on impact of the ships which get through because they have more escorts. So you're not even when you're talking about a lot of sloops. 36 more. Once you get to 36 more, etc., you are starting and have a big impact. Once you get up to 72 more, you're having a massive impact, and once you're up to a roughly 180, it's almost all over. Seriously, any individual sticks out on the design of the Nelson class hull? Stanley Goodall does. But honestly, if you're going for that, then one of the first random books we have this week is probably what you're interested in. British Battleships of World War II. This is by Alan Raven and John Roberts. It was published in... when was this book published? A long, long time ago. This is the third impression, published in 1981. The second impression was published in 1978. The first edition was published in 1976 by Arms and Armour Press. Now, this is one of those books which you will never want to put down, but it has things like this. Can I just get it out? Yeah. Okay, let me put it back at the point at which the focus point set for the camera. I've got to get it. I have got to upgrade the camera, but there's no real point in upgrading the camera. There you go. There's just a lovely design, which has the H3C, the G3, and the final G3. Early G3, final G3, and the differences between the two. What's interesting about this whole thing is that they work through the various designs. They show you the designs. They show you what they're talking about, what they're thinking about. And it's really rather cool. But more importantly, this book has all those details in. And by the way, for those points about the camera, and before people start going, well, we'll fundraise very kindly for you to have a new camera, there is a limit to what this poor laptop can take. So new camera is part of the new PC build. And that's going to be done in time. It's hopefully going to be done... I'm thinking I'm going to be able to do it hopefully October. For anyone asks what that noise was, that was the bird stand falling down because after me and the builder, who my lovely builder friend came around and sort of put it in, my sister decided to move it because she knew better where it should go. And it didn't go in that well, apparently. It's just collapsed. I'll fix it in a bit. Anyway, this is a very, very cool book. But it does have something which makes you all very happy. Fold-out section. Again, if I go back to the point of the camera, on Nelson and Rodney, they had full design. Which makes it interesting and is very cool to read. And tells you a lot about them. It's one of those books you really do want to read, but also you're slightly worried that there hasn't been anything really equivalent to it published since the 1970s, honestly. And yeah, the story of the N3 and where that comes from and how they get to it is quite amazing. Starts off with an 8-gun form, then goes to a 9-gun form, and slowly they start organising where the guns will go, and slowly they start moving. And here's my theory. My theory is they start off with this, they start off with the 4-gun format, the 4 twins, then they go to the 3 triples with the 3rd one back here, and then slowly it moves forward. And eventually, of course, you have this form, H3C, then the G3s, da-da-da-da-da. Then you get into the Ls and the N3, and eventually the L2s, and then the N3, finally. The M3 looks pretty robust, trust me, as well. And then finally, you get to Nelson and Rodney, which, of course, have the 3 guns forward. And it's almost like the aft gun just slowly moves forward until it goes from a sensible position to a, oh my lord, that's a stupid position, to a, okay, that'll do position. It's a good book. And hello, Ang Mid. Thank you. Thank you for joining. I'll go through it. Sanford at about 920 length, 925 feet length, 110 foot beam, 32 feet. It would be around 22 foot of inches of armor to hide that, or 18-inch side plate. Yeah, it would be interesting. HMS London. From what I remember of Doctor's chats, yes, the admiral doing the gun size was a cursed admiral beginning with B's discipline. Jonathan Burrow obviously had a question. I missed it somewhere. Yeah, well, that's the KGB-16s. But I didn't. Had read that the Japanese tried to buy F-22s. Did the RF try to buy them? Anyone in the US was still building them? Nope. They probably should have done, but no, they went in for the F-35 project. Thank you, Robert Roberts. I thoroughly enjoyed your Dutch Finnish minor navies video. I'm glad you did. I'm hoping you will enjoy more as they go through. This is a good book. It's a really good book, and it's worth buying, but it is expensive. Please note I am being openly omitting about that. It is chronically expensive. And it is very much tracking a copy down. Glenn Stewart. So when does Taiwan invade the mainland? Never. They would need to literally be able to reproduce the droid army from I don't know, episode 1 of Star Wars to be able to do that. JC, I went to an Ivy type private school in the States, and I was surprised by a number of incredibly book smart but otherwise clueless, overprotected kids that were yeah, you get those all over the world. Well, Dusty, I know you've been deployed this past week, re-angling teenagers. Did you leave Derek and Jamie in charge of recording episode 99 of Battleships? I'm told they have recorded it. They recorded it. I'm going to get it off them and put it up because I don't think it's made the final jump. So yes, that'll be sorted out this week, and 99 probably got about the same time as episode 100 does. Why would the USA raise a sting if British sold a Vickers design 873 battleship, aka Export Nelson, to Japan? And how many would they buy? Well, nicest way, the Americans would raise a stink because the British selling the Japanese anything of that size would be a seriously technological jump for the Japanese. They have very good technology, but their armor plate, etc., as advanced as going to be by the time they build Yamato, and the time period where they'd buy an 873 battleship, it would be it's not where near there. And Nelson to Japan, and how many would Japan would love to buy more, but they wouldn't get that money. Probably 2 or 3. Oh, high CPU usage detected. Calm down, little girl. You can do it. You can do it. Let's make sure this is positioned properly to balance it so you get maximum cooling. Good girl. You can do it. Oh, and before anyone asks, my fridge is now called Anton. I decided it needed a name, as it stores my iron brew. Dear Guy, was there ever an RN equivalent to the Tillman design studies? Yeah, there are some of the battleships which are looked at for coming after the G3 and M3, which they're starting sort of their designs looking at. The British do hear about the Tillmans, and they do have designs in there. But basically, as I've answered in a question which someone's already put elsewhere, if the Americans had built the Tillmans, they would have found themselves dealing with the British going, right then, so you can either build them supersize or you can build them fast. So we will build G3s and G3-like vessels, which you will have to track down. You won't be able to track them down because you won't be fast enough, so you're going to have to deploy ships everywhere. And that's going to be a worse scenario because then we'll have hunting pack groups of N3 style ships, which will go around hunting down your ships, outnumbering them and killing them. So yes, you'll have the most powerful battleships in the world, but we will destroy you with the capabilities of our ships, and using our advantages, which is basically how the British would have responded to it. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm basing it on how the British responded to things like the Panzerschief and other vessels. This is what they do. The British produce ships which are fast enough that they have to either chase them down or hunt them down. And then they have powerful enough ships which, in a pack, will destroy them. Mikey Newman, my grandfather was on a sloop in World War II, HMS Woodcock. Ooh, cool. That would have been a Black Swan class, and it was quite a successful one, if I remember correctly. If RMV Oceanic had been completed when war broke out, how quickly would White Star Line offer up to Iron for a troop ship? It wouldn't be so much quick to offer up if they'd be called to offer her up as a troop ship. Paul Emis. Good luck with the word count, Glenn. Nice thing. What would the Royal Navy do in response to the Tillman battleship? I've answered it in full in a video, actually. I recorded today a comment response video for Friday, which would come out. It's on to some of the comments from I've seen on the 1939 and 1940 videos, so I thought you'd all enjoy it. Jurgen, question to anyone. I understand the difference between brown water, green water, and blue water, but I'm having trouble with breakpoints between each of them. Can anyone help this? They aren't really breakpoints between them. What we're talking about is it's your form of navy in terms of how far. If your navy is truly oceanic and is supposed to go global, then it's going to be blue water. If it is regional and operator, but also can operate sort of close to your area to sort of regional, then it's probably brown water. And if it's just coastal and riverine, it's green water. Broadly speaking. Another name sometimes used for green water is littoral navies. Always fun. In 1784, the Barbary States attacked a U.S. merchant vessel. The 2020 U.S. military response. In 2022 U.S. military response. How many days would the war take? Don't take this the wrong way. If it's the 2022 U.S. military versus the 1784 Barbary States, then the U.S. military would have to try and find their smallest weapons, because otherwise it would not be considered a proportional response. And what tactics would the US military use? Probably a single LHA turning up with some US Marines and F-35s and helicopters and amphibs aboard, and would basically wipe out the Barbary pirates. Hello, Code 85. I've just seen a question. Your first book still in print? Yes, it's still in print. It's still printing. Brown waters, rivers, and inland waters. Green water, easy, limited oceanic reach. Blue water, wide oceanic operations. Was I confusing brown earlier with something else? Sorry, it's been a weird day. We think our neighbour might be putting some stuff down in their garden which could be affecting the dogs and poisoning them, and possibly the humans. So was I getting brown water confused with anything else? I think you're right, and I think I got my brown water confused with the... Oh, yeah, there's true blue and there's blue water. And I think I got brown water I detailed is blue water. So, yeah. So, brown water is, I think, the riverine one. Rivers and inland waters, as Andrew Paul says. Green water is riverine to easy and limited ocean reach. There is blue water, which is regional oceanic reach and deep water operations. And there's true blue water, which is wide operation, oceanic operations, and global operations. Sorry about that. Brain dead. Sorry. I see the glare is still quite hard to see the book dial on my screen, at least. I'm sorry. Yeah. I need to change. That camera is the thing I need to upgrade, but there's no point upgrading that camera because that basically that camera, even at this setting, which is on 1920 by 1080, is overloading to an extent the poor laptop, which uses its processor for its graphics system. And children, I was reading the Grand Fleet today, and Brown suggested a 300,100 ton battle cruiser was considered. But seeing this hard to beat and comparable to some of the later lines. Later lines are pretty good. Jay, the Acting Bullock, do you have any advice on starting a Naval History channel on YouTube? Do it. That's all you can say. Do it. Just start and see where you come from. And what people are interested in, and just talk about it and answer the history questions. And be prepared to be wrong. Because in the nicest way, it's like... I've seen people write some very strange things in comments occasionally, and some people go, "Oh, if you've got this wrong, you should give your PhD back." And I go, "Well, PhD is not like that. PhD says I've reached a certain level of research standing, etc., and I've done that level of work. It does not mean I know everything. And if anyone ever tells you a PhD means they know everything about their subject, walk away from them very quickly." But also, and this is the key point, new information is always coming to light. Things that would have been right 5 years ago, 10 years ago, with the information we had available then and the understanding we had then, might not be right today. Even in history, new information comes to light. New analysis is available. One of the interesting books, and this is the next book we'll be going to, that I've got today, and I'm really quite interested in, because it's a lot of what I do. And I need to talk to my engineering friend about this. I've got a colleague, not Track, a different one as well, who does this a lot with me, is this one. Thoughts and Roman Strategy, a new approach and interpretation. And basically, as I've talked about before, there is a certain form of engineering which is called, what was it? Well, basically an engineering autopsy. You start from the engineering and you work your way back. What did they actually build? What was the equipment? And then you work out the strategy and things based on what they emphasize and versus what they're saying. Forensic engineering. That's it. Forensic engineering. And that is one of the areas which is giving us the biggest information load on ships and on actual real strategy. Because there is the claim stuff, but you always have to remember, especially in the periods where we're talking about where there's the treaties, etc., everyone is lying to an extent. The question is how much and what form is their lying taking. As a rule, the British lying takes the form of manipulating the rules. As a result, the American lying tends to be slightly more opaque. Also, other advice, Jacqueline. I think it's Jacqueline. Enjoy yourself. Pick topics you enjoy. There is a reason why I acknowledge and I accept the fact that I will never make as much money on Patreon as others do, because I retain some control of topics, etc., in that I don't hand it all over to patrons. And I do know you make more money if the more you hand over to patrons, the more money you can make. But I like to be able to add in topics which I just fancy doing. It's nice. And talking about topics which I fancy doing and patrons, there is a recent vote which has come in, and I've just had the beep go tell me, we have a vote in. So, what have we got? One. Poll ended. The results are in. So, with 17 votes, winning and ahead is Bigeron's Cell 1 Fisher Scheme, the integration and then de-integration of the executive and engineering branches. Okay, that's going to be one of the videos of this month. And Glyn Stewart, Cruiser Actions of the Spanish-American War, is number 2. So, Glyn, you finally won. I'm not sure if you're still watching, but you finally won. That's got 13. And behind that was Ian Carr's, the C-Class into AA Cruiser and Details of Service, with 11. And George Newman's, Why Did the Captain of the Armed Merchant Cruiser swear up and down that he had been sunk by a USN cruiser? That got 10 votes. That would have been slightly more complicated to do, but it was just about within the edge of things I do. Michael 66, RN use of water-based armor. Honestly, I thought that was going to be far more popular. That's why I got that particular Battleship book out of the boxes in the office. In the upstairs and sort of in my mum's office now. It was originally when I was a kid in my dad's office. But yeah. So, this week's going to be Cruiser Actions of the Spanish-American War, because I can do that this week while rebuilding the garden, which apparently I'm going to be having to do. And then in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be Bigeron's Cell 1 Fisher Scheme question. So yes, we have the results in. We have the results. Fun times. Hello, Cody85. Captain Seaforth, the Bristol video. Did they have any mixed 4-inch, 6-inch batteries as effective successors to Lager's second-class cruisers built with uniform 6-inch batteries? I don't think so. Oh, no. No, it comes to me. Why did they have the mixed 4-inch, 6-inch battery? Mainly because the 4-inch was faster, and the whole question is, okay, yes, the 6-inch is better for engaging other cruisers, but the 4-inch is better for engaging destroyers because you can fire more rapidly. Honestly, the standardized 5-inch would probably be best, but life happens. And eventually they build up to a standardized 6-inch because they get the 6-inch a 6-inch gun, which is actually quicker to fire. Halikas. And Madison, would it be right to call the Miniscrares class dreadnought battleships obsolete by 1930s? They could certainly be stood to be upgraded a bit. But again, would the US have built the Montanas instead of the Hours if they'd built in the Lexingtons as battle cruisers? Quite possibly, because they would have been less needing the fast ships. RG, Dr. Clark, what would happen if in alternate 1930s the US builds instead of the South Dakotas and Isles in disregard of the treaty? Well, they basically break the treaty, so everyone else will. 32 knot, massive 12, 18-inch guns, battleships with 16-inch belt. You probably get the British matching whatever they're building, because the British would. It would be painful, but they would do it. Probably actually not as painful, especially if they start it in the 19... Depends where they start it in the 1930s. If they started beginning 1930s, after the British have come out of building Nelson and Rodney, they've got just enough industry still surviving. It's basically 1934, which is the death knell industry. And then they start rebuilding in 1936 and just gets, ouch! Whereas if they do it in the early 1930s, then the British can probably match without too much effort. The Japanese would be having an absolute panic attack. Code 85. How would the Dutch buying a pair of 12-inch armed battlecruisers and a pair of carriers based on them in January 1939 both affect the Dutch East Indies and Alaskas? Okay, it depends. If they're buying them from the UK and they order them in January 1939, the British can probably build them. If they start in January 1939, the odds are they will get paws at the same time as the British. Well, they might not get paws at the same time. The British, because they would be the Dutch headquarter ships, they'd probably be available by 1941. Where would they be deployed, though, is an interesting question, because by that point, Netherlands will have fallen. Will they have a Dutch crew? Will they have a British crew? All good options. So would they be Dutch ships or would they be British ships? Actually crewing a pair of 12-inch armed battle cruisers and a pair of CVs, or 12-inch armed super cruisers, let's be honest, because battleships and battle cruisers, well, they're looking at 14-inch guns as the entry point at this point. The interesting thing will be to what happens in comparison with the Brits and where they get employed. So if they're on the Dutch flags, they could get deployed to the Dutch East Indies, in which case they could be deployed January 1939. Theoretically, they could be deployed with 4C. So you could have had one of the carriers and one of the battlecruisers would also be part of 4C, in which case the British might have matched it with their own carrier. In which case you would have a 2-carrier force, you would have 3 fast ships as the center of it, and you'd have the destroyers around them, and that would be your naval force sitting in the 4C, which would have an impact on anyone's operations in that region. Let's put it this way: it's not an insurmountable force for the Japanese, but it's not a good force either for them. Don't remember, why not Frederick the Fridge? Those who know will know why I chose Anton. Those who don't, I suggest you go watch some more television programs. And most importantly, have you seen the chip fabrication in Taiwan? What makes you think they haven't built a drone army? Because if they had, I think they're just about crazy enough they might have done it. Anton the Fridge. No. The new tower when it gets here. By tradition, my cars and my computers are named for capital ships, and various ships in the Royal Navy in order. Volvos get named for battleships. Subarus get named for cruisers. Computers that get named for aircraft carriers. So I've had Furious, Argus, Hermes, Eagle. I have had Courageous and Glorious and Ark Royal. So next one will be Illustrious. If the cooler is Anton, the fluffy research assistant biscuit storage Bruno. No, the fluffy research assistant biscuit storage is called Nox. Don Giovanni, could the US have perfected the airborne aircraft carrier? Not yet. Does he? Carrying on Mr. Newman's question, which navies in today's world would you classify as true and upcoming blue water navies beside the USN and RN those? Honestly, there is a very small list of nations which are really true blue or upcoming. Upcoming blue water navies, I'd probably put the Indian, the Chinese, the Japanese there. I'd say the French have the capacity to be, depending on what's available at the time. And the Italians have the capacity to be, depending on what's available at the time. Got any money from the book yet? Not that much, but some. Yes, that's a model to build. That's above that is a swordfish, and somewhere around here is a wildcat. Yeah, there's the wildcat. It's in the bag. So they're 3 models to build. Basically, my plan is Stafford, your box, is here. It's down here, and all my uncompleted models, both various forms of supermarine, various forms of space marine and supermarines, but that's a joke for something else. And airfix models and other things which I've got to build are going to go in the box, and therefore they're going to be there for me to build when I want them. And I think I'm going to have to get a new one of these because I think doing the carpet has kind of ruined my lovely little cutting mat. In fact, I think it's kind of broken, my cutting mat. Oh, hey, caramba. If there was another rich Greek patron and public added to the pile, what would an Iron Duke class modified to 14-inch minus mid-turret for more boilers bring to the table during the mid-campaign? It would certainly be a useful addition. How much of a useful addition depends on your perspective, but it would certainly bring something to the table. No, I don't want to do that. And 40, it's going to be Forts and Roman Strategy, because we're going to talk about this book. Because this book is cool. Okay, so the reason why I'm bringing this up and I'm talking about this in terms of engineering relation is it's a really cool book, but it has this. What did Frontinius build, and what did Agricola finish? Conspicuous by its absence from the above lines of control has been the North Wales coast. Historians have long attributed the forts in this area not to Frontinius, but to his successor, Julius Agricola, who arrived in late 77. This is on the basis of Tacitus. The Ordovices, shortly before Agricola's arrival, had destroyed nearly the whole of a squadron of allied cavalry quartered in their territory. Such a beginning raised the hopes of the country, and all who wished for war approved the precedent and anxiously watched the temper of the new governor. Meanwhile, Agricola collected a force of veterans and a small body of auxiliaries. Then, as the Ordovices would not venture to descend into the plain, he put himself in front of the ranks to inspire all with the same courage against the common danger, and led his troops up a hill. The tribe was all but exterminated. He formed the design of subjugating the island of Mona, Anglesey, from the occupation of which Paulinus had been recalled, as I have already related, by the rebellion of the entire province. But as his plans were not matured, he had no fleet. The skill and resolution of the general accomplished the passage. With some picked men of the auxiliaries, disencumbered of all baggage, who knew the shallows and had that national experience in swimming, he did so unexpected an attack that the astonished enemy who were looking for a fleet, a naval armament, and an assault by sea, thought that to such assailants nothing could be formidable or invincible. Tacitus clearly states that the control network in the northwest was still under construction in 77, and all the cities were far from subdued. He also states that Roman units had already dispersed into winter garrisons when Agricola arrived, so it must have been early autumn. We know of 4 forts in the northwest which are probably early Flavian, and are likely to date from this period. These form a rough square or quadrilateral surrounding Snowdonia, and connected by Roman roads. Turmen Yemur, Lif LFT, were the north and where the north-south routes meet the northern route. Penliston, FOT, dominating the fertile Lynn Peninsula. Carnarvon, LFT, on the Menai Straits, opposite Anglesey. It's actually a really cool fort. It's up the hill. It's really quite cool. And Cairn, in the Conway Valley. Given normal mode of operation, we would expect to see a route along the coast with intermediate forts. There is a Roman road inland along the north coast, west from Chester, however, which appears to head for Cairn, and an extension, again initially inland, to avoid the precipitous coast of Carnarvon. Roads have been proposed south from this route up to Cloud Village to meet the Dee, and a fort at Ruvin has also been suggested to fill the gap. Another route south from Cairn heads up the Conway Valley to across the mountains at Festiniog and reach the nodal fort at Tominur. The intermediate fort at Ben Yegethlu is almost certainly of a later date, connected with mineral extraction. Perhaps most surprising is the lack of Flavian forts and sites on Anglesey, given the strategic importance as the refuge of the demonized Druids and its fertility compared to any other part of North Wales. There is a newly identified small fortlet at Kemlyn on the northern coast, and it's been postulated that there should be a fort to be found at Llangynifi, on which what is probably a tidal inlet in the Roman period. A reasonable theory about the north coast of Wales would be that Frontinius and his staff had conquered most of the territory of modern Wales in 74 and 75, although leaving the north coast and the Druids on Anglesey untouched. Frontinius had completed the plan and had commenced the construction of the control network of forts and connecting roads in the newly occupied zone, including Ordovician territory. These were well under construction in 77 when the Ordovices revolted. This led to Agricola's urgent and decisive intervention to quell the revolt, followed by his invasion of Anglesey, involving his auxiliaries swimming the Menai Straits with their arms and horses. Now, what's interesting is you have various ideas of what the forts were, what the parade grounds were, and what they were supposed to be doing. And again, you have plans. This is a good book for plans and for designs and maps and things, which is always nice. And of course, as we know, Roman forts are very... How do I put this politely? Well, they do like a nice standardized form, but they're also not above adapting that form when they need to, which does produce some interesting things. There's always an interesting difference. The Antonine Wall is planned versus the Antonine Wall is built. Ooh. It's a really interesting book and a really interesting insight into what can be achieved and understanding which can be made through forensic engineering. It's worthwhile looking at for that reason alone. Oh, they're not new neighbours. They have been there for roughly 20 years. They're just interesting. We'll deal with it. Would I be right that the Avro Lancaster and Avro Lincoln made the Vickers Victory bomber pointless? No, it just made it less than viable. It could still be useful. Any bomber can be useful. So anyway, what would the reaction of the Royal Navy of 1784 be to such a marine action against the Barbary States? Mostly the Royal Navy of 1784 would probably be thinking, we want that ship. If you're talking about the 2022 US Navy going back in time and fighting the Barbary pilots. Hi, CPO. Hi, Doc. Hi, CPO. Fast forward. Just Sackville has experienced the most successful year in over a decade. Also, do you think that the idea of a Commonwealth Carrier Strike Group is dead? I hope not. I think actually a Commonwealth Carrier Strike Group would be pretty sensible. I'm glad Sackville is doing well, and I think it deserves to do very well. And I think a Commonwealth Carrier Strike Group is probably quite sensible. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the Pacific we see, in South China Sea, if we see such a strike group formed between the Australians, the Brits, and the Canadians, and maybe New Zealanders will turn up as well. Regarding your TBD book, I must say I still have a hard copy on order with a third party does not yet have been shipped. Been on order since the 7th. I am not sure how. It should have been with you. I'd be tempted to cancel that and order it from someone else, honestly. Captain Seagull, I believe the RN considered gunboats in the 1860s capable of shooting St. Lawrence Rapids. Yeah, but the Royal Navy in the 1860s is insane. Certifiable on many levels. VCH, Trinity Cartridge. I have VCH, just got it. And the Gascoigne is going to be featured on this day's Yoldi Garage. Cool. Any good books on the Italian Navy during World War I, World II? Still getting some of those. There are better ones coming through now. I'm looking forward to them. But still not really that great. There's a... There is this book, but it's tiny and it's quite expensive, but it's still good. It's called Mediterranean Surface Actions in 1940, Exploding Myth on Mussolini's Mare Nostrum, Confronting Italy. And it has interviews with... Well, it has all sorts of things here. It's basically about Calibri, Spada, and Spadavento, and all the things that went on with them. It's good, but it's not exactly massive, and it is from the British perspective to an extent. So it's not necessarily what you'd like. There's also Between Hostile Shores, which is Mediterranean Convoy Battles 1941 to 42, which is similarly from the British perspective, but does have some good Italian content in there. And... No, that's Corsia Midway. Yeah, I haven't got the later ones. I do have this book, which is quite a good one. Rise of the Aircraft Carrier and Pacific Naval Strategy 1941 to 45, which is quite good. But no, that's not much about the Italians in that one. Hunting Tirpitz, no. Basically, the Italians are not really covered that well in sources at all. They're just not. We're getting there. Hello, Dagdom12. Good afternoon from the Peach State. Good afternoon to the Peach State. Nice hearing. We'll send an alternate timeline where most America's South America, Latin America allies, except for Argentina, Venezuela, and Guatemala, includes the Republic of Panama, joined the British Empire, a sphere of influence. What does the British do to Panama Canal? Keep it or give it to Panama? Probably knowing the British, they would give it to Panama, but it would be sort of like the Suez Canal. Yes, it's Egyptian, but it's owned by British companies. Cameron, I would not rule out Taiwanese robots. You can currently buy in Japan a 2-story high, 4 legs, 2-arm, free moving Gundam that you can pilot from inside. I do know that it's not a military project. Trust me, the military ones will be scarier. But it's quite cool. Anyway, thanks for making the channel. Particularly enjoyed the Minor Navies episodes. There's at least 2 more of those coming up. And there's going to be... It's going to sound strange. I'm saving the Soviets for after I've done some more Soviet cruisers. So they're going to be part of the Christmas series. There's going to be a Soviet one in there. Because, you know, I was looking at the Christmas lineup and going, what can I add in? It's going to be Soviet Union-ish. Because I'd like to put in some stuff. And there's going to be Age of Sail stuff. There's going to be some videos from Canada trip, etc. all in there. And yeah, that's going to be there. So thank you. And thank you for supporting the channel. Watching it is really, really cool because that really helps me. Please do email me to work in progress VCH. I'll look forward to it. I think, are the Japanese worse off by getting all 5 Yamatos? And yeah, Friday's comment might include where I point out how stupid the idea of torpedo boats at Denmark Strait. That's not actually. It's not stupid. It's having torpedo boats at Denmark Strait would be useful. It's getting them there. That's the fun thing, but it's still useful, especially as the trouble is. The Germans have 2 types of torpedo boats, and they have the ones which are called torpedo boats, but really are small destroyers. And the thing is, having them there would be kind of useful, especially if you've got extended range ones. Hi, Wayne. That's right. Why didn't the French revise the Lion-class super dreadnoughts to build them in the 1920s? Because they only had so many yard space and could only do so much. That was it. Call it illustrious. That is the basically problem, Verdun. As I kept pointing out, the big problem with the Japanese was infrastructure, and they needed some other source of fuel. Not even much. They just need enough to keep to provide them with a operating baseline that they could draw from. And the only scenario you could see them getting that in Japan would be having the capacity to produce synthetic fuel. Why are the French so far behind in battleships? As I calculated, Normandy's would count up on line as the Hood does, and Leon's as the G3 does. Honestly, because the French infrastructure, that's what's holding them up. It's always the infrastructure. And, well, glad your fluffy research is happening now. Mine probably won't be appearing until I finish digging in a gravel strip. And also, I haven't had any food today. I just realised that. I'll sort down a little bit. 192. Models? Burke says, yes, models. Well, yeah, if you see a 5-star review from Heather Margerson, it's me. I use her account on Amazon because we share love books. Thank you. Bano. I've seen that F-16 might be handed over to Ukraine. There might even be a few in service over Ukraine already. I doubt there are any in service over Ukraine already because it's going to take a while to set up for them. Honestly, there is this idea that you just get that aircraft or this wonderful thing you can hand over. Churchill put it best when he said the least mobile thing in any world war in World War II was a bomber squadron. And it's true today of any aircraft. It's not just we have the plane and we have the pilot. You need to have the engineers, you need to have all the support staff, all the equipment in place, all the spares, all the pipeline, and you need to have the munitions. And you go, well, yeah, you can have an F-16 and that can drop a bomb, but can it drop the bomb which the Ukraine has? Does it have the hard points in the same position? Does it have the characteristics of that bomb programmed into their avionics and programmed into their targeting systems? Because if it doesn't, those bombs are never going to hit a target. It's the same with missiles. Can it provide the right data in the right format to the missile? So it's not just a case of here are some aircraft. It's a very complicated procedure. I haven't got a walrus kit here. I've got a walrus in the house built, but it's dangling from the ceiling over my HO scale railway in the garage. What happened? What if Hood took the fatal shot, but a second magazine is removed? What happens next? She probably slows down a bit, a fair chunk, but she probably doesn't go booming sky high. Now that can mean many things, but if she's still firing and Prince of Wales is still firing, then probably Bismarck try and pull Bismarck away, so Hood doesn't get sunk. But and then she's probably taken home and she's actually refit and rebuilt. Or she's sent to America to be refit and rebuilt. Goes there the same as Rodney's currently. Rodney was supposed to be en route. Yeah, that cutting mat has done many things for me. It has done many things for me. Oh yes, it does deserve to be replaced. Nice. If the RMV Oceanic be completed with a 2,808 passenger capacity, what would our troop capacity have been? Oh, probably somewhere in the region of 12,000, maybe more, but 12,000 most likely. John Barrett, don't know if you heard of Shipwrights models kits. I have. They're cool. My dad used to buy them. I'm still not sure where his models are. Don't take this wrong way. I have a feeling his girlfriend's family either got them or threw them away because they didn't realize what they were. But they're no longer. They weren't anywhere I could find when he went. As a Dassault Mercure and Dassault Hirando unsuitable for airborne early warning? I'm not really sure if they're that unsuitable. I just think they would need a lot of work to make them there. Nice. Why was Argentina looking to buy Littorio? And what would be Brazil and Chile buy in response to Canada? Argentina was looking to buy Littorio because they were very capable vessels. You'd buy a Littorio. And Brazil and Chile Brazil would probably go to America, most likely, or they might go to Britain again. And Chile would probably go. And a nice way, if Argentina buys a Littorio, they're probably going to buy maybe King George V's, but probably something which looks a lot more like a lion. How much is the Roman Fort book? That's an interesting question. That is an interesting question. Let's see. The Roman Fort book. £30 UK, $52 in the US. So I'd consider that well within the affordable range of books, but there again, my discerning costs on books is slightly ski-whiffed, as I'm often told, because I spend about 10 times that on books quite happily sometimes. Hi, Lance. Yeah, kids, I had that issue on Amazon.com. I cancelled an order from USNI, got a 50% off the order. Cool. Go to USNI. But again, did the USN and RN share any ship submarine plans besides the Admiral class during World War I and the interwar period? Not really. The RN occasionally sent people over to try and help the USN, and the USN occasionally sent people over to watch the RN. But there was a kind of difference between the two, and there is. It's going to sound strange. Between the naval constructors and the Bureau of Ships, there is kind of a healthy competition / oh my lord, what are you doing now? Engineer Design, do you like the F4U Corsair and the Saab Gripen? They're my two favourite fighters. They are very good, but I have to say my favourite. They are definitely my top fighters, both of them. But my favourite, as most people who watch this channel will know, is the Hellcat. I'm sorry. I like the Hellcat. I always have. I don't know why, but there's just something about those giant engines, wings attached. I just like them. Hello, Jeffrey Targeting. Hello. I see you have enough Iron Brew behind you to last day or so. No, that was about an hour's consumption. No, seriously. Those are the special bottles which I'm drinking, but not just I. Drakenafel has been drinking some of those and has supplied them for the wall when it's built, which is going to have, of course, I even got the fairy lights for this going in it. Where are they? They're here, yeah. The lights have arrived. So the lights are in here. And the plan is that the bottles will be arranged on the wall at an angle using this stuff, probably mounted on a larger sheet, and then hung up. The reason it'd be mounted on a larger sheet that's sort of bottle shaped is so it can be fixed into the wall with just 2 fixing points. So it does the minimal impact on the wall rather than multiple fixing points. Chris Ryan, any schools that offer a forensic engineering degree in the UK and viability someone from US studying there? US studying in the UK is very common. I have a lot of American students. As for forensic engineering, there's not a specific degree path, but there are a few universities. Kingston, where I teach the history of engineering, does have some core modules around forensic engineering, and forensic engineering is becoming a big part of degrees, especially in civil engineering and mechanical engineering, because the idea is you sometimes have to look at what's being built because you don't have the plans for it and figure it out before you can fix it. And so forensic engineering has become some core modules of those degrees in the UK are now having forensic engineering as part of it. CBO Fastforward, if Shattered Sword isn't the final word on Midway, what else would you recommend? Oh, I've got a few good books on Midway. I do like Shattered Sword. It is a fun place to start. But I do actually have a book which is simply called Midway, which is also very, very good. I'm trying to hunt it down now. It's in here somewhere, because I was staring at it the other day. And there is, of course, that book which I brought up earlier, The Rise of the Aircraft Carrier, and Turning the Tide. Both are good books for that. Where is Midway? Where is my Midway book? It's up there somewhere. My Midway book is up above me somewhere, staring down at me. I know it is. I saw it like 20 minutes ago. It was definitely here before Drakenafel was here. There's War Plan Orange. On War. Naval Fighters, Naval Aviation. Midway. This is where you realise that I do look like a complete and utter dirtbag from down this side, because I have wearing my trousers for, well, basically my trackies, which are have been used for doing all the building work, so they are kind of messy, but they're very comfy, so I keep wearing them, even though they're not smart enough. Oh well, there we go. Let's see, Midway. Where are you? I know you're here somewhere. That is now going to bug me, because I cannot see it. I'm sure it's somewhere around here. Not in that section. Not in that one. But I do have a book about Midway, which was produced by the USNI not that long ago. And it's a really good book. And I've done book reviews on it and everything, because this is a very good book. But I now cannot for the life of me spot it. That's annoying. That is annoying. Hang on. No. It's not that one. It's not that one. No, sorry. But yeah, there is a good book called Midway, which I'll hunt down the reason for. Message. Oh, come on to making homemade chicken fettuccine alfredo. Ooh, nice. Why the revenge class so forgotten in history, given they're ones who doing the hard work? Because they're not the cool, fancy, sexy things. That's the thing. They are. They're not. They should be. Yeah, The Battle of Midway by the USNI. It's a very good book, and I honestly have it somewhere, but I cannot find it. And it's edited by Thomas Horn, and it's Naval Institute Guide to US Navy's Greatest Victory is what it's called, and that's a very good book to start off with. And that's quite up to date on current academic trends and current thought in terms of naval schools, etc. I can't remember who it was, but one of the higher ups in World War II, Royal Air Force, said the biggest loss they suffered during the Battle of France was the engineers and their equipment. Yes, that was massive and really, really problematic for them. If USNRN got their Grumman Avenger and Fairy Swordfish Spearfish AEWs, how long does integration, new operational doctrine take to be added? Not that long if it's early enough in World War II. BCH, when I get a little money, I buy books. If I have any left over, I buy food and clothes. That sounds well, Erasmus. Dub Squad. Yeah, Hail, I just got home from Portsmouth Dockyard today. So about 90% of the tonnage of the Royal Navy alongside. Not quite, but you'll be getting up there for definitely the 70%. There's a fair number of submarines and other things up north. Hi, I'm on 16365. That's right. What effect does the Admiral class hull being converted into Eagle have on RN carrier aviation if the Admiralty Cochrane can be converted into Eagle? It becomes massive. You convert an Admiral class into an aircraft carrier, you have a very big strategic asset. Which is why I want them. And it also allows you to carry a lot more aircraft. You also will have a very different approach to the Fleet Air Arm because suddenly your biggest ship will be one of your aircraft carriers. There will be no way that BT will want that be having its aircraft flown off it by anyone other than Dark Blue. Because his entire position on it will depend on the politics of it and the image of it. And so he'll go for it. JC, the Hellcat is a brawny little brawler. Yeah, it is. Jonathan Barrow, my favourite fighters, A6M2 and the Mirage 3. Cool. By Lieutenant, how did the George V and Tennessee class for 14-inch guns compare? The George V are newer and better, but the Tennessees are not to be ignored. They're good guns. But also, it does say good news in that Leonardo has announced they are negotiating with export orders for both Wildcat and Merlin. I assume the Merlin may be for Norway. Any idea who might be after Wildcat? Yes, and I have a feeling that could also be for a similarly Scandinavian origin. Stafford, it's never my sister who nicks my books, it's my mum. It's never my sister. I love my sister dearly, but she doesn't nick my book. She has enough of her own. Nice turn. Am I right that the British would not have put AA guns on the hoods after ending even if she'd been refitted? Possibly they'd have put some 40mm Bofors down there, but anything else would get very wet. Hey, Hellshot. That's good. Forensic engineering tends to be more a master level area. Undergraduate level knowledge for engineering is needed first for most things looking at anything in the forensic area. To an extent. John Sykes, and FYI, the discount I got on just one book paid for a year's membership in the USNI. Cool. Hello, Stephen McDevitt. George Guy, Anton, a turret on the German capital ships? Nope. That's right. Why is it overlooked that finance was British Achilles' heel in World War II? It wasn't really that much of an Achilles' heel in World War II. It was an Achilles' heel post-World War II, but it wasn't an Achilles' heel in World War II. Colin Cameron, do you want some bars red cola or line in glass bottles to give your display a splash of colour? Nah, I'm going to stick with Iron Brew. 1901. I just like it all. And during World War II, which Axis Navy had the best naval shipbuilding capability and infrastructure? None of them. No, probably the Japanese are slightly ahead of the Italians, who are also ahead of the Germans. BCH, was there ever a time in World War II that a British ferry command pilot, most being civilians and quite a large number being female, landed a plane on an aircraft carrier? I think there were, actually. I seem to remember some deliveries to aircraft carriers off the coast of the UK when they were getting new aircraft were dropped off by some of the civilian ones. And I seem to remember a picture of a woman in a flight suit on a carrier, but I cannot remember for the life of me from when it was or where it was. So I might be wrong. So anyway, if the UK expands occupied World War I scenario, what would a 100,000-ton aircraft carrier look like, and would the UK build it? Well, for a 100,000-ton aircraft carrier, please look at the US Navy's current aircraft carriers, and that's a rough idea of where you end up. Somewhere like that. America, favorite fighter, Sea Vixen. Andres Garcia, hello. What you think could happen if Japanese put all 6 big carriers in the Coral Sea battle? If they have all 6 carriers, then they have more aviation there, and considering what happens in Coral Sea, it might end up going more their way, but again, it's going to be a touch of luck. All these things are going to be a touch of luck. It's where are the aircraft carriers, where are they positioned, are they found with fighters on deck and bombers on deck, or are they found having launched their aircraft? Do their aircraft find the enemy? There's all these factors in. So having more aircraft gives you more chances of getting a decisive attack, which might end up sinking more American ships, but doesn't necessarily guarantee you don't get damaged yourself. I said, why in 1947 Treaty of Italy did the US and UK give up the Littorias they had as war prizes? Because they didn't want them. They were good for Mediterranean, not good for them. Yeah, guys, seen a lot less model warships in the hobby shops these days. It's a bit annoying. And alright, Game a cat. That's good. That the Japanese have the best shipbuilding capacity says a lot about the other Axis powers. It also says how much ships they've been building in the 1930s. So anyway, what would the UK put on 100,000-ton carriers? If they're building carriers that big, expect them to be putting a lot of aircraft on them. Listen, if the British had made a Town class basically Belfast from the beginning, how does that affect things? It makes them bigger, gives them more AA armament, gives them more firepower in sort of their secondary weapons, but it doesn't really affect things too much. Could make things interesting for Birmingham and Liverpool in their operations. JC, when did the British RAF first allow women to serve as fighter pilots? Oh, honestly, no idea. I can't remember off the top of my head. Would have to look it up. Now, so I'm going to go and edit the video again a little bit. So. Now, this book, Maritime London. This is Anthony Burton's book, A Historical Journey in Pictures and Words. And it's kind of interesting because it covers London from... Well, it covers London as early as it can go back, from the beginnings to the present day. And I like a book like that. And it has pictures in here, which includes showing a Heinkel bomber over Surrey docks, and the King George V dock, and its busiest in the years of the 20th century. It has loading railway carriages. Always nice. It's got an introduction of hydraulic power, and it's got an explanation of that sort of the list of cranes and what they could be used for. And it's a cool book to read. Even have a picture of a Comet, the first excursion steamer, and a man-of-war dreadnought being towed up the Thames by a steam paddle tug. It's got even these things, canal boats, and it's well written, and it's worthwhile reading. It's got some lovely pictures of the Great Eastern. Scott Russell would have been used to the client asking him to build the ship, and then after his designs had been approved, he would have been expected to be left alone to get on with. But now he had Brunel to contend with, and the contract was quite clear. All calculations, drawings, models, and templates, which the contractor may prepare, shall from time to time be submitted to the engineer for his revision, alteration, or approval. The engineer to have entire control over the proceedings and the workmanship. It was never going to be an easy relationship. Quite early on, word started put around that Scott Russell was the real designer, and that Brunel had done little more than come to him and say, "Please build me a big ship, I leave the details to you." When news of this came to Brunel, he was livid and made it quite clear that the whole project originated with me, was worked out by me, at great cost of labour, and Fort devoted it now for not less than 3 years. The actual work occupied 2 yards, the Russell Yard and the adjoining yard, recently vacated by David Napier. At first things went well with the construction, but costs kept mounting. Russell ran out of funds, and it was agreed to advance him 10 instalments of £8,000 each, provided an agreed scheduled work was carried out. Then a major row erupted between the two men regarding how the great vessel was to be launched. Scott Russell wanted it launched bow first in the river, but Brunel vetoed the idea, demanding it was to be launched sideways. For the cash-strapped builder, this was more than a disagreement about method. He had signed a contract that stated he had to pay for the launch, and that Brunel had the ultimate decision on how it was to be done. The result was inevitable. Scott Russell went bankrupt. Then emerged that he had mortgaged his own yard, and that it now belonged to his creditors. The steamship company now had to begin negotiations to get access to half of the ship that now lay under someone else's property. Prices were agreed, but the rents were immense. The vessel was finally ready and launched on the 3rd of November 1857. Brunel had requested that there should be no spectators, everything should be done quietly and in orderly fashion to his direction. But the company, anxious to recoup some of the rising costs, sold tickets to the event. The result was more chaotic than orderly, and as a result there was a fatal accident when one of the workmen was hit by a winch handle on the mechanism that controlled the restraining chains. There had to be more than one attempt to get the vast ship in the water, which could only be done at the high spring tide period. Eventually the task was completed on the 31st of January the following year. The ship was never the successful passenger vessel that had been hoped, but she had gone to prove invaluable in laying telegraph cables around the world. But controversy has never left the ship. How much of the design really was down to Scott Russell, and was the bankruptcy brought about by Brunel's constantly making changes, or had the shipbuilder got his estimates wildly wrong? Whatever the truth of the matter, it was nothing to dent Scott Russell's reputation, who went on to build more ships. For Brunel, it was his last project. His health deteriorated, and he died in 1859. It's a good book, and it's very interesting to read, and it's worthwhile. I like books like this. No, you missed the question. Would RMV Oceanic have made a good carrier conversion? Better than Argus, but I'm not really sure I'd want to convert it. Wayne's World of Science. Have you read the 1632 series, specifically Baltic War? I don't. Hang on. I might have done on Kindle. I think I might have them on Kindle, but I'm not sure whether I do or not. If World War II starts with the IJN having a Japanese Nelson, how is she used? What is the chance of survival? Not high. She's going to be fighting a lot. In the nicest way, if she's a Japanese Nelson and she's as slow as the Nelsons, then she's probably not going to be used for much more than the protection of the home islands. Shot. So, Doc, if Norway bought more Wicks and Clemson class destroyers from USN, would that have helped in 1939? It wouldn't have exactly hurt things if they'd bought more. It would have been useful to have those ships, certainly. The more ships you can... this is going to sound strange again, but if we consider the scenario that happens in Narvik, right? If you have a flotilla of destroyers with those ships, suddenly the German destroyers can't afford to concentrate as much on those coastal ships as they possibly would like to. And also, if they're operating in a group like that, then they can use those ships to stop the German destroyers getting such good positioning around them, because there are this line of destroyers going, well, no, we're not going to allow you to go through us, so you have to stop there. Anything which buys them time and gives them numbers is going to help them in those scenarios. Stafford Johnson, Dr. Locke, if you could have convinced the Admiralty to purchase the Great Eastern about our cable nailing, how do you fitted her for naval duty? I wouldn't. But if I had for some reason to need of her, then probably I'm using her as a global depot ship to support operations around the world of smaller vessels. So probably she would be some form of torpedo boat carrier. In which case she would be covered with probably cranes and torpedo boat holding things on the top of her, and all the stores, etc., for supporting those flotillas inside her. So no, there will be a Roman era galley or cog in my bedroom. Cool. Near gazebo. Well, that's quite a story. It was certainly fun between Russell and Brunel. John Sykes, I was discussing errors in make-believe World War II movies that were supposed to be semi-documentary. What are your favourite World War II movies for accuracy and no secondary fictional love stories? That's the trouble. I haven't eaten today. I'm basically living off iron brew, so I'm now burping. I apologise. What do I fancy? Battle of River Plate. That's basically my favourite. That and the Cruel Sea. The Cruel Sea is fairly good. River Plate is what I have, and yeah, those are good ones. Boy, Stuxley, does the RN still have the large aircraft carrier battleship floating dry docks, or were they all scrapped or sold? They've all been scrapped or sold. I think most of the larger ones have long gone. Although there is rumours there is one of the larger ones is sitting around being used for oil rigs in Norway, but I don't think it is. I think it's one of the more recent ones. Admiral Lee finds himself on HMS Hood prior to the Admiral Strait with future knowledge. How does he fight the battle? He doesn't. Don't take this wrong way, but he'd be an American admiral turning up at a British ship when they're not allies and not even at war alongside each other. It would be a kind of case of where the frig is our admiral and who are you? He'd be in the brig faster than you could say yippee-ki-yay. If he... Let's put it this way, that just wouldn't happen. But if you're serious enough, if he does take it out and they do for some reason take him seriously and do, let's say, the British Admiral knows him, Holland knows him and understands and knows, and goes, Lee, why are you here? And Lee goes, I have no idea, but I know what's going to happen to you. And they manage to exchange information. Then what does Holland probably do differently? Honestly, what they might do is they might call in more force. Because it depends how far much. If he says sort of 24 hours before the battle, then you could get a serious scenario where they know where the Germans are going to be, so they can position themselves and call in King George V and call in the aircraft carrier quicker and have them within range. Definitely the aircraft carrier within range. Which would change how the battle was fought. Thank you, Wainsworth. Senator, I'm looking for civilian ships for the kitchen, as the rest are also civilian. Liberty ships, Victory ships, all the various types of them. That's good. The fact is, if the British have huge carriers, this is the point I sometimes make. If the British, for some reason, let's say, continue a policy from 1945 onwards that they always maintain a 6-carrier fleet, they probably continue to maintain their own aircraft. And you might see, the fact is, what you might see is a variation of one or two things will happen. Either the British will go stubbornly the French way and will keep maintaining their own aircraft and will justify any cost in order to maintain building their own organic naval aviation capability, or by about the time you get to the F-14 successors, F-18, etc., the Anglo-Americans will be a full streaming ahead joint aircraft production bureau of naval aviation producing their aircraft. And it will be something interesting that will be coming out that. So it would be probably an F-18, but it would not be an F-18 as you or I necessarily perceive it to be. Or an expeditionary support vessel. She could hold. Well, you could theoretically put some Marines on her, but honestly, the Royal Navy would probably just be looking torpedo boats on her. She'd be a mobile defensive system to protect areas. Lawrence, again, Thunder Below, if I've got it, it's on Kindle. That's good. What was the most important man in shed with spanner invention in the 20th century for naval military technology? That's difficult to tell because quite a lot of the in shed with spanner inventions then go through some modifications to become what actually gets deployed upon ships. Because mostly the in shed with spanner inventions are built and then they go land forces and then they get adapted. But I'd say some of the turbochargers, especially for used for torpedo boats, were important. That's the one. Without having, you want me to? What sort of AW radar dish layout will be most practical for Dassault Nacelles and Dassault Hirondelle? I do not have the airframe structural layout. I do not have the plans and the stresses and weights of their models. So, and I'm a naval historian. So, yes, I could work those things out, but it would A, take me time, and B, take me a lot of plans and data. I cannot do that off the top of my head. I love that you think I can. That's a really, really massive compliment to me to 96831. But I'm not. I am not Tony Stark. I know Merchants. Hi there. Would I be able to send you pictures of my multi-model via Twitter and get your opinion on it? I would suggest that you send it by Discord rather than Twitter, because Discord tends to do less nasty things to pictures. But yeah. Would be happy to look at it. Night, Jonathan. I think if Admiral Holland was told the Hood falls victim to a golden battle BB, how would he try and prevent Bismarck getting that hit at less than 9 miles? Change his maneuvering? Probably change his point of bearing, especially if he gets the details. Plus, as we don't have large-scale floating dry dock, shouldn't one or two be good investments in considering the size of QE-class aircraft carriers? It would be sensible to actually. It's going to sound strange. You can argue for that, yes, but first of all, I'd like to actually build a second dry dock that can decently take them. That's actually a built graving dock rather than the floating one. Yeah, I should probably order some food. Yeah. In the Admiralty and the AW, the ferry Spearfish fell victim to post-war austerity. But if it had been built, what carriers would use it, and how long would it last an iron? Every carrier that could fit it would use it, and it would last until they replaced it. Racecar Meerkat. Was there any thought to energy management in the armored carrier structure, or was it just a case of make it stronger? There's a lot of thought about energy management, but in nicest way, it is made to be as strong as it can be while being a carrier. As efficient a carrier as it can be, but it's made to be as strong as possible within that criteria. And yes, I'm gonna go get some food. Well, I'm going to tap into my phone. So this section is going to become food ordering. What food shall I order? Deliveroo, I think, tonight. I think they have a voucher for them. Okay, Deliveroo. What's open at night? 8:45. I don't fancy pizza. I had Chinese last night. Sorry, I got home from the looking after the school, and I got some Chinese for my mum, my sister, and myself to feed us all because they were just hot and didn't feel well. So I didn't think it was sensible to make for anyone to do any cooking. So I just ordered Chinese food for them. And what do I fancy? Do I fancy Korean chicken today? Not particularly, actually, tonight. Not because I don't like Korean chicken. I just already eat chicken far too often. Oh. What I was saying that. Yeah. Ooh. Have you ever gone into a restaurant that you tend to regularly order from, and you find they've changed the pictures on the menu, and you're just going, "Yeah, that's not as nice as it used to be. That doesn't look as good. It used to look nicer than that. I'm not that keen on that." And food is on its way. I have got to stop spending money on these things. Come on, come on. It's now asking for auto-notification. 20 chicken nuggets and barbecue sauce. No. I didn't go for the McDonald's. I was good. I went for a pizza. A healthy one, actually, as well. Well, healthy-ish. As healthy as they ever are. Oh well. All right. Pepperoni pizza it is, actually. Christian, would a modern version of the HMS Unicorn make sense with the current RN2 carrier fleet? No, but free LHDs to replace the Albion, Bulwark, and Ocean, and to an extent Illustrious would certainly do so, and Argus. Oh, just got my copy of Lost Sound of Tin Can Sailors on the Loving book. It is a good book. That's good. Would the F-18 be bought if the carrier appeared today, or would the Iron buy more F-35s after crying into their iron brew about how they're going to make the budget balance anytime soon? F-35s. Because whilst you might think it'd be sensible to get the F-18 because it's cheaper, if you're originally buying it and you were looking at the air group, you might go with the F-18, but you don't want a mixed air group. So you've already got the F-35, so you'd buy F-35s. Because then that's training pipeline, development, logistics, all those other pipelines you're already set up, so it's just cheaper to go F-35s because what you've got existing. Why did the British look at a Nelson class with 3 triple 15-inch guns and G3 with 15-inch guns? It's simply a case of weight and speed. If you take the guns down to 15-inch guns, then you save tonnage in shells, you save space in shells, you save tonnage in everything pretty much, and you can use that tonnage for more speed. Leave it be, sis. I'll sort it out in a bit. Yeah, I know, but the trouble is the water, etc., and everything made it looser. Don't worry, I'll sort it out in a bit. Don't worry. I've got pizza on way. Oh, you didn't say. I know, sis. You didn't say, though. If you don't tell me, how would I know? Anyway. I'm not sure if this is your area of expertise, but why did the Tiger Cat on the Centurion main battle tank chassis project never get built? If not, who should I ask? The Chieftain. And honestly, the Tank Museum. But my thinking thought on the center of the Tiger Cat on the Centurion main battle tank chassis is that it was just lost in terms of it didn't fit with anything that anyone really wanted to build at the time. Altra, if Poland had an auxiliary carrier, would that have helped, or would she be used by Germans, or would she be scuttled? Depends where she was in the world. If they had left her in a position where she could get captured by the Germans would probably try to use it or scuttle it. If it had been left outside of the Baltic, then they probably would have found themselves into British support. Is Tex-Mex food available? Not really, and I say not really because there are a few places which do sort of Mexican, but not really Tex-Mex. How big do you envisage those 3 LHDs? Camera size or bigger? Trieste size, a little bit larger. Not much, but just a little bit bigger than Trieste size to just accommodate the various requirements of the British Royal Navy versus the Italian Navy. Bonus. So if we need to build another large grim dock, why isn't it considered priority? As having only one, which may be in use, is that they do about carrying that had a problem, and the other is if in the middle of the Pacific. Principally because have you tried to sell politicians to spend any money on anything which isn't sexy and isn't going to be an immediate vote winner? It's long-term infrastructure. It's useful. It's essential. But it's not something they're going to invest in because, well, who's it going to win votes with? If the British get land will sound, what is useful as a second versus in place? Probably the RAF's primacy in terms of air defence in the United Kingdom. Basically, the big problem for the British in terms of getting area air defence for missiles, etc., is that the RAF will continually shout in this period that no, fighters will do the job. Fighters. Mainly, they do perceive area air defence missiles as a threat to the dominance of the Royal Air Force in terms of air defence in the UK, which is its USP. And you can understand it when you consider some of the conversations you can have with the British Treasury. So, what is equivalent to the BV in British tanks in Royal Navy ships? See, a ship is really a mobile town with everything in it that you need. So everything's in it. It's equivalent to the BV in the boiling vessel. They even have some boiling vessels. Would it have been better for the British Royal Navy to get all 6 Queen Elizabeths and 8 Revenge, or was the 6 QAs and the 6 R's more likely to renowned battle cruisers being built as they were? Probably the latter option. Although 6 Queen Elizabeths, 5 Revenges, and 3 Renowns would have been far nicer. RG, what's the impact and changes USS Stalin type battleships could hit 26 to 27 knots initially outside of them being larger? The British and the Japanese will both push to go faster. Staff Thompson, I still don't know why the Royal Navy wouldn't go for a Wasp class LHD. I mean, come on, it's in its name. The USN's Wasp class LHDs are horrendously crew power intensive. The 3ST class are far more in terms of British crewing practice. Waynes, after spending 4 hours getting a Windows 10 laptop to reset, all I say is fool me once. There's no way I'll ever use Windows ever again. Windows is one of those things that if you know it, it's very good. If you don't know systems, it tends to be fine. And if you are moderately used to it and you know how to, you can bodge through it quite well. But, you know. Second, Free Dutch Navy submarine 019 sinks Shenano. How you miss the USN IGN? IGN upset about losing their carrier, but they lose that anyway. The USN are probably upset because their submarine service probably go, why would us? But other than that, they're probably just happy that she's gone. How quickly will my fluffy research impeders get in here if I pick up a laser pen? Incredibly quickly. Listen, last thing, follow-up questions. If the Neptune class are gone built, how long do they last, and do they make better helicopter carriers? Possibly. They'd have been slightly. Their structure and framing is slightly different. They're slightly bigger. They could have been better as helicopter carriers, but there again, they just still ended up with the ugly box on the back. Ugh. Plus, one would imagine that the combination of aircraft and missiles would be better overall. A disabled Queen Elizabeth would be a major embarrassment worldwide. Good vote winner. Yes, but it hasn't happened yet, and they will blame it on the previous government, which is pretty much every government's policy. Always blame everything that goes wrong on the preceding governments. It's what they do. It's how they operate. Be back in a second. I've got to go close the windows quickly because there are flies that are starting to come in here. And I'm also going to quickly move my sister's move the hose for my sister quickly before she comes out and does it and hurts herself again. Right then. Right then. Ooh. Oh. Thank you, Mikey Newman. Thank you. It's always nice having new supporters. Zerfscott, blaming the last government doesn't work so well after 14 years in power. No, then you blame the previous version of your own government. Yeah, that's the trick. That's why you change prime ministers so often. No. We blame the administration of May, or we blame the administration of Cameron, or the administration of this or that. It's what they do. It's the joys of life. It's honestly is the joys of life. Right then, so next book. What should it be? Shall I go for a new book or a old book? I'm going to go for that one because that one kind of links in quite a lot of the video books we've already discussed in new books, and it's a cool one. High CPU usage. It's always high CPU usage. This is what ends up, I swear, with the various sound issues. High CPU usage. This is a book which actually my good friend Garius, aka John Bull, would love. London's transport from Roman times to the present day. Honestly, this book would cause him to go, woo! Just like that. Woo! Probably with Napoleon the Cat one looking on going, what are you is up to you? Anyway, it's just cool. It is a very cool book. It starts off, of course, with the beginnings, which has sections of Roman road as they're shown and as they were. And the first thing you realise about Roman roads is they have a camber, they have a design, they have systems to try and deal with, well, to try and keep basically people safe and everything moving. That's the policy, that's what you're doing. And it's a realization that mud can build up. This is what I love about this one. This basic design is mud can build up in here, but these little, troughs will take the mud away, and these stepping stones allow for pedestrians to cross from one pavement to the other pavement without going through the mud. And that's just a cool design. If you did that today, you'd kill a load of cars. Not work. And, oh, good lord. Can we all imagine a modern, you think of the complaints you get about speed bumps. Imagine those in a road. That would basically mean nothing but big 4x4s are going this way. Everything else is too low. So, after meeting John, I can't picture him sounding like a pigeon. He gets very excited. He's lovely, though. He is lovely. And that reminds me, I need to start pushing on and organising various things with him. We need to push on and organise and mush. We have great ideas, but we need to actually get them moving. And then, of course, the omnibus. Steam carriages, people! Steam carriages! Hancock Omnibus, built by Tom Brogan. Turns out to be apparently very smooth and comfortable. I am not quite sure about how they can ever be smooth and comfortable, but it's a nice idea. The various bridges across the Thames. Of course, this is one of Joseph Bazalgette's other designs, which we often forget, is, of course, Putney Bridge. He didn't just build the London sewer system, he also built Putney Bridge. The old Westminster Bridge. And the new Westminster Bridge. And it's a really cool book to read. The Tunnelling Shield. Now, this is a cool thing. So, we often think of the modern tunnel boring machines as something really new and innovative, but really it's just the mechanization of a process which had already been developed by Isabel Kingdom Brunel's dad, which is a tunneling shield. And the idea was that this would protect the workers as they go forward doing the tunneling. Now, of course, we have the rotating cutters, etc., of the tunneling boring machine. But basically, that's just a mechanized way which really improves on the system. But prior to that, you had this sort of human tunneling shield which would go forward and slowly be moved forward and slowly, carving out from the earth and from the rock. It's really quite cool. And they'd be building bricks, and of course, it's a brick structure being built around it, behind it. So they're moving forward almost sort of at bricking level and bricking speed. Mikey Newman, is there a preferred seller of your book? If you're American, go to US&I. If you're British, go to Pen and Sword. They'll give you a fairly good deal. You're buying it directly from the publishers, then the people doing the printing. But I don't mind. Amazon, all are good to me as far as I'm concerned. Amazon does allow you to give it a good Amazon rating, which does help with Amazon sales, which are just people sometimes who just pick the spot of a book. Those words. Very smooth and comparable to what? I think compared to your image of what it'd be rather than the reality of it. Thanks, running. Was that the IPMS show today? Cool. New book acquired. Fubuki Class Destroyers by Langer and Alec. Oh, cool. Very cool. But yes, this whole book is rather fantastic. I'd say I love some of the pictures. Cannon Street as it was, Cannon Street as it is today. Worthwhile going for a wander around. It's really quite interesting to go and look at it. The roof garden is a lot of fun. Steam trains. Of course, because everyone needs steam trains in their lives. They make everything better. Including the Carnation. Cool. Cool. Thank you. But no, it's a really, really good book. That's good. With the gullies for the cartwheels went in, we'd have a much better tram-based public transport system. We'd certainly have fun. Hello. Deliveroo has added extra staff, I see. How much are you getting paid for this section of delivery, sis?
I have no idea. Nothing.
If I'd known you wanted something, I'd have got you something, but you didn't tell me. Do you want me to order something else? I will do, sis. You sure?
Yeah.
I'll order a dessert from somewhere for myself. Would you and Mum like a dessert for creams? Would you like something from Creams or something like that? Go check with her. If you would, message it through me. Okay. Sorry for the small advertisement there, but trying to make my family actually eat. I'd given up today, and then suddenly, after I've ordered food, they announce they want something. So I have a milkshake and pizza. Good, very good local pizza place, which does really nice pizza. Captain Seaforth, and a 100,000-ton Queen Elizabeth would have been Cadabar, not Vitol. Even the extended 65,000-ton version had lots of arguments over Cadabar versus Vitol. Honestly, you could. It's not much foot more you'd have to add on to the Queen Elizabeth class to make it worthwhile being Cadabar. But the moment you make it Cadabar, you then have an honest debate over whether or not it should be nuclear powered. And that's the real debate the British wanted to avoid. Because a nuclear-powered carrier would be a very big step up in capability in terms of operational range, and they were worried what message that would signal to the world. Now, conversely, in a post-Brexit age, actually a nuclear-powered carrier would have been very useful for the signal it would send to the world. So it's short-termism as ever. Sorry, very hot. Very, very hot. Seriously, they did far too good at the release people. Hello, Shomac. Let's be honest, because of the break there was between the operating Harriers and the operating F-35s and Queen Elizabeth class, you could probably, if you had enough carriers coming into service and they'd be big enough, it's not that much of a difference to actually rebuild to Cadabar rather than rebuilding to Vistol. That's it. Would it be fair to say the Germans lost World War II but took British Empire down with them? No. British Empire does actually quite well to about the 1950s when the Americans decide it's a problem in the whole global exchange with the Soviet Union, and the British are slowly turning the empire into Commonwealth anyway, and have been since about the 1930s. So actually earlier, 1920s. And in a plan which they've been sort of working on since about the 1880s. So, no, it just accelerates the process. And does it not necessarily in the best way because of that. And that leads to some of the troubles we have today, say, in Africa. Because surprisingly enough, turning from what is basically a dictatorship, but it's called colonial rule, to trying to set up a democratic government is not a quick process. And in many ways, the colonial power has to bear the responsibility for that. And the trouble is the rapid decolonization that the Americans were especially in favor of undermined it to an extent, because what do the colonial powers build up? Colonial powers build up the army, they build up the navy. Well, not the navy, but they build up the army, they build up the police. They don't build up the methods of democracy. And when those are the institutions which are working in a country which is suddenly left without the colonial power as the nice way to counter to those institutions in many ways, the counterbalance to those institutions, they will then take power, and that's what you end up with. Sorry. I tend to forget you're a naval historian, not any other type of historian. I'm a naval historian, but I'm also a massive geek, and I love naval history. And naval history tends to factor into all sorts of other history, so I tend to wander around. So I sometimes have knowledge, and sometimes I've done reading anyway. Snack and Burton. I've just uploaded those pictures on the general Discord. Enjoy the pizza. Thank you. I look forward to them. And Georgian, Stephen trains versus the Mallard versus the UP Big Boy. Okay, if I prepare, you realize if I prefer the Big Boy, I will get killed by most of the British public because they love the Mallard is so much beloved. At least he's not said Big Boy versus the Flying Scotsman, at which point I'd be having to try and build concrete walls around my house. At that one, I'd probably be getting hunted down by Drakinafel as well. Honestly, I love Mallard and those ones, but my favourites are always the Great Western. I love the Godless Wonderful Railway, and that's really my favourite trains. My favourite railways and trains do come from usually from the engines, do come from the GWR. The Southern are just terrible. Southern has always been bad, and Southern were terrible in that even at that period. Elniar, I'm a bigger fan of the A1s than I am of the A4s, but I do like the A3s in there as well. LMS, the princesses. I love the princesses. They are beautiful. They're beautiful, but yeah, but Big Bertha is really who you have to compare the the big boys to. Big Bertha, look her up. Now that is an engine. Big Bertha. Oh, that is an engine. And the fact that she, as far as I know, is not still around to this day is frankly just sad. But she was an engine and a half. Oh yeah, Big Bertha. Let me see if I can find a picture of her. Mm-hmm. Built in 1910. Big Bertha. Scrapped in 1957. Let's see, can I find a decent picture of her? That looks like a decent image of her. The Licky Banker. Yep, that's her. Image file. Desktop. Desktop is desktop, and Big Bertha. There you go, there's Big Bertha. That's one. There you go. Big Bertha. She's pretty. Should be over that side, shouldn't she? So I look at her. Let's see. Hi, Blue Overs. The need to refuel makes supercarriers limited utility. If not nuclear, must refuel every 2 to 3 days. That is a problem. That would be fun, Stafford. Just what the thing that really kills the Empire is probably the Suez Crisis. Certainly has an impact on it. Hello, Doctor. Do you subscribe to the quarterly publication Warship International that is published by International Naval Research Organization? I have Watership International Fleet Review, which is Y for the magazine, and I think I do get Watership International, but I usually get it because I wander into one of the universities I work at quite often gets it, and so I nick their copy. Means Starling, trouble is getting history to pay the bills for them. You can say that. That is fun. History paying bills is a very interesting subject. There's literally one person I know who manages to pay bills thanks to history, and his name is Drac NFL. The rest of us doing a lot of other things, and I am so glad of him, proud of him for doing that, because he gives the rest of us hope, but also he really does work hard and deserve it. Both Big Boy is the best, but to be fair, there are no serious mountains in the UK. Have you seen this beauty? That's a serious incline, and this is the banking machine engine for it. I recently got British Secret Projects missiles, hypersonics and ramjets book, and was an AM version or air-to-air version of Sea Dart really a good choice? No. If cream cheese worked, what changes? Not much, really. Enjoy, Sage. Royal Router. Hello, Royal Router. One of the problems with nuclear propulsion is the amount of time it takes to train people to operate them. True. The British would have to do a system that would heavily leech off their submarines, of the submarines. Telling you, Big Bertha, was that not also a Joan railway gun in World War One? I think so. Oh, good Lord, Wayne, you're suggesting I go full evil overlord? This could be fun. Is your new railway going to be analog or DCC? Honestly, I haven't decided. If it does end up being digital control, then I'm going to have to upgrade some of my older Engage engines, which is not impossible. I do know someone who does it. And whilst I've done it on some of my HO engines, I'm not tried. It's going to sound strange. I'm not tried to trust myself to do it on the Engage because they're that much smaller. So I'd have the discussion of it. I'd think about it. Jurgen, that was not a question. This is the question. Would you like to see him in a race? Oh, that would be interesting, definitely. There was an air-launched version. No, there was an air-launched version of Seacat. Yeah, stupid is this idea? Well, let's be honest, I'd enjoy watching it, but it would be kind of an air. How much? Can you imagine the sheer wing space that missile would take up? For what? Yeah, Terrorista, you will have about 2 years of schooling after boot camp to learn your rate for nuclear. Good luck. It's going to be tough, but it'll be worth it. Mention question about destroyers. I read a report on a ship being hit on the depth charges but surviving. Is this common? It's not impossible for them. A few do. It depends on what their depth charges do and how they deal with it. Dear guy, yes, there was an early design iteration element of an all-forward armament. It would have been interesting if they built it. Lewis, Queen Elizabeth versus 2 USN LHDs with full complement F-35. Queen Elizabeth probably wins because she'll have a higher sortie rate and she's actually designed to operate as a strike carrier and generate those aircraft in those things. USN LHDs, they're going to be good, but not quite the same. And also, you have to remember the USN LHDs will have US Marine Corps pilots, and the US Marine Corps are obsessed with the bar on HMS Queen Elizabeth, so they'd be trying to surgically hit Queen Elizabeth in such a way that disabled her, but didn't damage the bar. whereas the Royal Navy would have no such compunctions about the LHDs. So yes, on grounds of strike carrier, and it's a sortie rate out of a full air group, and on grounds of the US Marine Corps not wanting to damage the bar, I will go with the Queen Elizabeth winning that fight. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I initially read that as Tornado is getting history to pay the bills. Makes sense going into the talk about steam locomotives. It is interesting. Geocapacity, no, it's actually earlier than that. In nicest way, it's not 2010s, it's earlier than that. You're building the ships from earlier than that. You need to do things right back at the beginning, structurally, to change them. Nathan, the Hellcat was sound for helicopter use. I mean, the Seacat was sound for helicopter use. That's interesting. Wait, what? I prefer my model hobby to model railroading. Uh, Andreas Gavin Garcia. Hello. What carrier, in your opinion, has the worst design? Grass Zeppelin, Wasp, or Shinano? Zeppelin, by a long way. Shinano's probably better than the Wasp. It's just got a very complicated damage control system, and their officers don't seem to be that familiar with it when it comes to operating, so that's more a crew training and capability scenario. And Wasp is just Wasp. It's got a very well trained crew, which you can use its systems very well, but it's not really built to do the things that it needs to do to be in that sort of ranking. That's good. The RM will be searching the wreckage of the wreckage for the USMC ice cream machine. So yes, but they'd be searching the wreckage. That's right. Is Polaris suitably to be ALBM, as I have the British secret programs? No. The other thing with the flight is the Marines may not wish to even attack one of the Queen given the rumours of swearing allegiance to the Queen. Look, nicest way, they liked the Queen. It was as said, a very interesting meeting apparently when the Queen wandered on there. They were all going, yes, 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 we're Americans, we won't be swayed by it. And within 5 minutes of this little lady chatting away to them, it was a case of, show us the Queen's enemies. We will deal with them for you. And there is some interesting conversations of about what happened to some people who expressed Republican views in a pub. But no, those are all rumours. They haven't even been printed in newspapers. So, yeah. I'm fairly sure they are just people talking. And US Marines are highly professional, and very few people talk after having had a public interaction with them. Because we are getting more demand from Model Channel on Discord due to recent model comments. Okay, that will be set up about time I manage to start building my next generation of Space Marines. So when I start doing that, one of the things that'll make it go live will be pictures of me doing my next construction project. So, which at this rate is going to be the thing that's paid for after the computer's built. Hello, Matt Fladlery. Hello to America. Enjoy the Gigadesk run. Spaduski, aren't there ice cream machines on Iron ships? There are, but they're never enough. Sea Dollars, what circumstances would be required to have Tiger attained World War II? Preferably ones that also kept Hood and the two R's. Probably if the Germans started building Panzerchief earlier. You can do, Wayne. You can post your September patron. Oh, so we had a big boy in operation here in my area a few years ago. Cool. How does the Voxo? No worries. Nice to see you. So anyway, we also need a UAD channel on Discord. That noted, and will be added at some point. Next week's office looking good. Office is looking quite good. Next week I'm off doing more stuff, assisting teenagers and making sure they get better. And then I have some family trips coming up in September, which I have got more prepared videos coming along for. But which you enjoy. This time, for this occurrence of the trips, I've gone with Wayne Boring's idea. For the ones in September, I've gone with my idea. Hi, NHP. What do you? Sorry. What do you think about the claims of the US 2440 doing 140 miles per hour unofficially against Mallard's 126? I think if they'd actually managed to do that, the US would have made sure they recorded it. US are incredibly competitive when it comes to world speed records. Senator, is the Queen really that charismatic person? Apparently. She does have a very much a charm about her. And she is very nice. And what can I say? US Marines like her. Who else? I laugh at this Marine discussion. I see we have no Royal Marines. Only some pub boasters. RMs don't have such a discussion. No, we're talking about what else? We're talking about the US Marine pilots and squadrons who are aboard the F-35s, and that's their scenario. The Royal Marines are a different base in cases, but that's the scenario we're talking about. So we're talking about US Marines, not Royal Marines, because the US Marines who were deployed on the carriers and their squadron were pretty taken with the Queen. I'm pretty taken with the facilities on the Queen Elizabeth class. They like them. Wayne, you have no idea how much iron brew I get through. It's quite disturbing. I see. So why haven't the British bought Meteor for the ALBM role? They're thinking things through still. I think the U.S. Marines just like a fellow warrior. That was the impression I certainly got from my discussions with them. They view her as one tough lady. Me putting that in British. Okay. Anti-ALBM. Yeah. There are different reasons. There are certainly reasons to have it, and there are reasons not to. Okay. But basically, it's a funding issue. Thank you, Stafford. It'll be very interesting to hear how Iron Brew being brugged. Elshot, you painted your wall Iron Brew colours. Yeah, that was basically the thematic choice because I knew they worked together. Honestly, my usual method for telling no, I'm not going to say that. No. Kudos. If Tigers were around for World War II, would have allowed Hood to go for refit? Theoretically. But probably that would mean she would be doing the Repulse role, Repulse would be doing the Renown role, and Renown would be doing the Hood role. That's exactly. Why does the RF view SAM batteries as a threat to it? When you need air defense SAM batteries? Because they view it as a threat to their fighter procurement. Because they're presuming someone will go, it costs this much to have a fighter squadron and maintain that. It costs this much for a long-range air defense battery, missile battery. The air missile battery can cover theoretically the same area as the fighter squadron. Or two of them can. Oh, that's cheaper. Let's buy them. And before you say no, let's be honest, this is the British Treasury we're talking about. There's always a good odd chance of it. I see Mitchell. Found out the other month that my dad, during his apprenticeship, he worked on HMS Terror, 1940s. Do you have any good pictures of them? I don't. But broadly speaking, HMS Vampire, the last remaining Daring class of that era, had, from memory, the same engines as Daring did. And it still has them fitted. So in a nice way, you could go see them yourself if you go to Australia. And I wouldn't be surprised if the brochure, which you can buy online, but I haven't yet got online, from the museum that hosts her, might well have pictures of her engines in there. I'd hope they would anyway. So let's keep. Back in 1940, there were talks of sending USS Yorktown to the Asiatic Fleet. How would that affect events? It would have made the Asiatic Fleet far more powerful, but it would also given the IJN a number one target in the area other than Nelson and other than Prince of Wales and Repulse. No, sorry, I was going to say that's not how it works. Sound batteries are less useful than a fighter squadron. To you or I, we can work that one out, but you're talking about politicians and the Treasury. I forget the name of them, but if you have the class of twin-turreted auto-loading 6-inch cruisers, the Iron Council 957, around in the 60s, how long do they last? Those would obviously be your present ships, but how long are they a viable weapons platform? How long does the political will to keep them around last? Probably into the 1980s. If they're Council 957, they'll probably come into service in the 1960s. They might well survive into the Falklands War, in which case they might actually make it to the 1990s because they'd offer a unique capability in the Falklands War of fire of ground support. So if they make it to the Falklands War, to make it in the 1990s, then they would be part of the Gulf War, providing shore bombardment, and then they'd probably be retired in the mid-1990s. Let's put it this way: £1,000 depth charges would have had a massive impact in terms of a wide area of probable kill. So you have them, you are more likely going to go with similar tactics as you do go with, but they are more likely to kill the German submarines because the German submarines are more likely to get caught in the cone of damage of a £1,000 depth charge. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the Tiger and Blake are still around into the 70s and almost make it to the Falklands War. So therefore, if you have a newer ship, they're going to be useful. And the British government won't want to get rid of them. Well, the odds are that even with the wars of choice doctrine in the 90s, etc., if you consider they couldn't let Fearless and Intrepid go without replacing Albion and Bulwark because of the legacy of the Falklands War, So the nicest way in the 90s, you probably would get something to replace them. How many you get to replace them is a different matter. You probably get two, but we'd have two large ships around. Paul Amos. We can always hope that all politicians and civil servants would actually read the history that say it may, but in a nicer way, some of the politicians I know who read history just pick up the tip about practicing their speeches in mirrors. And if you ever want to see if a politician does this, just think about them standing in front of a mirror when they're doing their hand gestures and watch how calculated it is. And why do some people think that a third renown kills the admirals? When you told me earlier they got built anyway, and the whole replacing feudal ships was a cover, probably for treasury. Honestly, a third renown doesn't kill the admirals because why would it? In a nice way, the third renown, that's a lovely ship that probably gets built from the third R class vessel, of the remaining R class vessel which wasn't built. So they are planning on 8. They built 5. Like the Queen Elizabeth were planning on 6 and built 5. They convert 2 R's into Renown and Repulse. There's another R class sitting there uncompleted. If they convert her into another Renown class, yes, you've got another Renown class, but you're still building Hood and the Admirals. You just probably end up with Hood being the 4th battlecruiser and the 3 R's, in which case you end up with 4 battlecruisers, 5 R-class, the R-class battleships, the 5 Queen Elizabeths, and Nelson and Rodney as your battle fleet. 16-ship battle fleet. Mikey Newman, we could have used some AEW in the Falklands and working rapier system. Rapier, it depends on the unit which one works. It really does. Rapier can work very well, but actually it's not commando rapier, and this is the first big change that comes out of the Falklands and its own development. Is rapier is developed into a far more efficient mobile system. AEW would have been brilliant. 40mm pom-poms would have been frankly spectacular in San Carlos. Then, what was the chance of Tiger and Blake both being available if they're still in service at the time of Falklands? If they're still in service, it'd probably be an intrepid and fearless scenario where one's in one's in sort of readiness, and one's actually available and operational. So fearless and intrepid both get down there. So probably Blake and Tiger would get down there on the same level, and probably one of those would have a task force commander down there on them, and one would have been gone in as Michael Clapp's flagship. There's Fox. By the end of World War II, did the Iron have auto-loading 6-inch guns, and how much nightmare were they? See the Tiger class. That's it on. With 1 Hood and 3 Renown, doesn't this save the battlecruiser squadron from the total destruction when Hood gets blown sky high and Repulse is torpedoed by the Japanese? Honestly, if you have that many Renowns and you have Hood, then you're probably going to invest more in the battlecruisers than you have before. Instead of, let's put it this way, a second battlecruiser would probably get modernized rather than Royal Oak. So Royal Oak wouldn't be your modernized ship. It would be one of the battlecruisers. So let's say, for want of argument, you can complete HMS Resistance. And Resistance is completed as the final Renown class battlecruiser. Well, the odds are Renown and Resistance would be the two upgraded. So you would have a modernized R class available. What's that going to impact on things? Would Repulse still be deployed with the Prince of Wales, or would it be Resistance? Would Resistance be around with Hood when would it be Resistance and King George V and Prince of Wales and Hood? That's sort of hunting Bismarck. The moment you have this ship in, you're going to have an impact on operations. It's kind of like if Royal Oak isn't sunk, it has an impact on operations. We're not sure how big an impact because it wasn't there, and it was, as I said, sunk. But if it had been there would have been an impact, and that would be something we would have to consider. Lions, if you could transport one World War II era ship into the Falklands War, what would it be in new condition? In new condition? In new condition. World War II era, you said, not World War II necessarily, so I could go for slightly adjacent either side. A Daring class destroyer from 1949 would be very, very useful. You could stick that in San Carlos Bay and give yourself a lot of air defense. But honestly, if you're going to go for anything, you're going to go for something big that's going to give you a lot of firepower for the Marines ashore. In brand new condition, HMS Vanguard, please. The battleship. Because with all those pom-poms on her, all those, no, not pom-poms, so all those Bofors, etc., and other systems on her, she'd be absolutely a nightmare for anyone to deal with. She'd be an excellent flagship for Michael Clapp. She'd provide air defense for the entire of San Carlos Bay, and her 15-inch guns from San Carlos Bay could probably range down nightmare on any position in the entirety of the Falklands. Aaron Burton's odd one that I imagine will be hard to answer. Britain doesn't get involved in the Suez Crisis, at least in the way it puts at odds with the USA, i.e., so it provides emotional support to the French, but not actually physical support, and the French and the Israelis go ahead with it. What does the East of Suez RN look like between the 70s and 2000? It's interesting, because if the British maintain their status as being a definite world power with a major fleet, then they could definitely be a more active participant in the South China Sea in various operations. It would be up to the British government and how much it's willing to pay, but it could be you'd have a more combined flavour of Western democracy promotion in those regions, and possibly even more involvement of the British in various things. Maybe not, maybe so, depending on whether they felt like it. DDHs are always nice, but Safford. But honestly, if I'm picking something from World War II, it's gonna be Vanguard. As much as I'd like a Tiger with its helicopter deck, etc., and useful hangar facilities for Michael in San Carlos Bay, having Vanguard and its firepower would be overwhelmingly useful. Dororito, what would have been line in sand to trigger US intervention, Falklands, or such a line existed, if the Soviet Union came down on the side of the Argentinians and deployed a task force? Wayne's world of science technology. What difference would it make if Canada had sent our 4 Iroquois class destroyers Falklands as part of the Iron Task Force? They'd have been useful. They certainly have some air defense capabilities which are pretty interesting. They'd have probably been deployed with the task force at sea, although one of them might have gone into San Carlos Bay, but more likely they'd left the task force at fleet at sea to help shore that up and provide extra strength and depth for that. Hmm. 1961. The question was if you could have something appear as brand new. The odds are, therefore, if she's going to appear like that, she'll have the crew and everything. If you're already involving magic, it doesn't matter. And if we had Vanguard still available in 1982, if she's still been in service, or even in reserve service, there would have been people trained for the guns, and there would have been people trained for there would have been the fuel for her. And actually, I'd say in 1982, there are probably still some people around the Royal Navy could get who could operate 15-inch 42 guns. And that might not be recent service personnel, but they could be called up. There'll be a few going round. In fact, a fairly large number of fairly large number of not quite 60-year-olds, probably. And coming on to the other point with Vanguard, there's the whole reason they chose San Carlos Bay. You couldn't use missiles if you were charging into San Carlos Bay. Because if you were coming in low enough to avoid the air defense missiles, you weren't going to be over there and have the time to get the AGM, Maverick, or anything else into each turret. So that's not going to happen. Because if they could have done that with those missiles, in a nice way, they'd have done them against Intrepid and Fearless, but they didn't. This is also British Malaya gave naval autonomy in 1945 and is tasked to create a buffer navy to buy time for an assist the RN if needed. They can't sustain capitals. What do they build? Destroyers, torpedo boats, and submarines. And probably some mine layers. Let's get it wrong. Why do missiles like the AIM-95 Agile and SRAMs fail to be produced? Because we don't have infinite money. That's what happens. That's what always causes these things. The Adelaide class would be fun as part of the RN Task Force in 1982. It would have been. Now, this is what I said. A pair of CVNs to the RN survive the defense white papers and get built and enter service. How do they do and how long do they survive? So you're basically building nuclear-powered vessels instead of CVA-1. They are probably into service in the 1970s, and they're probably leaving service in the 2010s. And probably replaced. If the British could have kept Captain Vanguard in reserve, where and how did they keep her getting into poor shape during that time? Well, like any reserve ship, they'd probably have to maintain her. Probably. Let's see. The RN used to have a base, which would probably do. Let's see if I can remember where it was. Can't remember where it was. Probably you'd be talking RN Portland, Weymouth sort of area. Because they do have that spot. And that would be an area you could keep it. Yeah. Probably Portland Harbour. Because they had quite a lot of facilities there. And that would be a fairly good place to store a capital ship. It's going to be fairly sheltered from quite a lot of weather. Good luck, John Sykes. And the only way you can keep her in service and keep her capable is if you regularly cycle her through refit, maintenance, refit, and activation of reservists. Testing. So probably yearly she'd have to have an activation and a shakedown, and then going for refit. Right, how far was the UK willing to go to take back the Falklands? If they lost one on both their carriers, would they still attempt to retake the island? Yep. The British had other carriers. The British were going to really push for it. And again, there was a slight advantage. They weren't expecting to lose carriers. And also, in the nicest way, there's also the fact that the Americans did offer them the choice of renting, I think, or taking an American carrier and activating that if they needed to. The more they lose, the more they'd have gone and dug down and pushed in. Once they committed, they committed. Oh, Stafford, that's far too many changes to figure through that, and that's far too much gone. That's folks. HMS Revenge is erected in 1932 after hitting a submerged rock. She's uncoverable. What does the RN build to replace it, and how does everyone react? The RN would be allowed to build whatever it wanted to react as long as it fitted the criteria requirements, and they would probably build and involved Nelson and Rodney, as that's the most recent design entered service. We can actually sort of have a look at the various options. I don't know, just reassured to me, you rewatched your RN Caravan post 94 video, and you seem to be not affable to Hawk Seahawk. May I ask why? Because as beautiful as it looks, the starter motor for the Seahawk, it takes an absolute age and is basically a disposable item. And yeah, it's not that fun. It's just not that fun. And the Seahawk is a very good generation of its aircraft, but it's not actually an amazing aircraft in terms of capability. I think we will change that to 0300 because I forgot I was going to do that. And yeah, fine on the new books today. HMS Terror. Now this is a good one because it's the design, fitting, and final and Voyager Discovery ship, and that's the interesting point. If you are, again, you might notice there's a subtle theme appearing here in terms of plans of things and maps and good plans. There are plans of this ship, some good ones, and how they converted her and how they adapted her, and it's worthwhile reading. Plan of her lower deck. I wonder why it's good at that angle. I'm not sure why. Probably it's the colour of the light at the moment. I'm probably going to have to change that in a second. We'll see. Terror and the Second Expedition of Algiers. Terror's final wartime engagement was ostensibly to oppose Algerian-based piracy in the Mediterranean. Following the expulsion of the British consul from Algiers in 1824 by Hussein Dey, the last day of Algiers, tensions between Britain and Algiers continued to rise, and a naval squadron, under the command of Admiral Sir Harry Neale, was sent to punish the Dey and quell the piracy in the region. Having been extensively repaired less than 2 years earlier, Terror was in excellent shape when she was once again called into wartime service. She was commissioned for the second time on the 6th of March 1824 with Captain Alexander Dundas Arbuthnot. That's a name for the Royal Navy geeks. Dundas and Arbuthnot in the same name, who did not join the ship until the 9th of March, becoming her new master and overseeing her fitting out for sea. On the next several weeks, she was rigged and made ready at a cost of £4,626. On the 7th of May, she set sail for Algiers. She made good time during her voyage, with her log indicating she was abreast Cape St. Vincent, Portugal, on the 19th of May, and moored at Gibraltar, Mull, on the 3rd of June, 1824. There is little indication in the log that the sailing problems which plagued Terror on her previous journeys were present on this voyage. However, while at Gibraltar, Arbuthnot spent significant time re-rigging the ship, suggesting something was not ideal in her sailing quality, or at least not to his particular taste. On the 30th of June, she set sail for the Bay of Algiers, where she anchored on the 13th of July. In company with HMS Ranger and her old consort, the bomb ship Athena, Sarah stood off Algiers for the next 10 days. Finally, on the 14th, she received signal to bear up and take over station for bombarding. In the afternoon, commenced firing from the mole head in the harbour of Algiers. Her shots fell short of the mark and did little effective damage, but the spectacle was enough, and a flag of truce was raised that afternoon. These were the last mortars Terror would fire in her career. And by 20th of July, the engagement in Algiers was over, and Terror made sail for home, retracing her outward route from Portsmouth. We'll stop over at Gibraltar. Again, there is no mention of any sailing quality issues in her log. It appears the Royal Navy had finally determined a way to stow and rig the vessel to make her sail. She moored in Portsmouth on the 4th of September, and her rigging was immediately stripped, and the ship prepared for ordinary. She was paid off on 20th September 1824. HMS Terror. This book is a cool one. It's by Matthew Betts, and it's worth a read. It's got lovely plans, lovely designs, and if you're interested in age sail and bombard vessels, you're going to find it interesting. If you're interested in exploration vessels, you're going to find it interesting. If you're interested in the design and construction of ships in the age of sail and how you adapt wooden ships from one thing to another, it's really cool. And it's a really good cover as well. Nice painting. If the authority of the US for carrying the Falklands was serious, what most likely candidate? Midway or Forrestal? Probably a Midway. Probably a Midway. It would be the oldest they could get away with giving us. How do you stop the government scrapping Vanguard in Zonies? Well, you didn't ask me that question. You asked me where they would store it. If they've made a decision to store it and they've kept it going, then they're not going to scrap it. If I need to defend it in the 70s against some vicious government, I would literally just point to it, point to the reactivations of the hours, and I would point probably to the let's see. The brain's dead. Probably to the Kirov class, but they're not, of course, built to the 1980s, are they? Well, no, they start construction in 1974. So basically, as long as I can make it to 1974, I can keep her safe. Because in March 1974, they laid down the Kirov. And that's all the argument I need to maintain her. In the age of the Cold War, it would be a case of, you want to get rid of Vanguard when the Russians are just laid down their new battle cruiser. Status, presence, pretty much everything I can chuck at them. Are you secretly a commie? You know, everything. And, yeah, it would probably win the argument at that time. Probably win the argument. Probably doing a lot of work here. Probably. See how big the switch goes here. Next one. Who would you rate as most dangerous in the mid-1950s? New builds online. Let's see what new builds actually get built. So, anyway, what was the most morally good naval mission? No, let's be honest. Any disaster relief mission is pretty morally good. The fact it has benefits is neither here nor there. Matrix Villain. How much faster would an upgrade in LRO be? Would the 1,000 odd tons available speed make one faster anyway, even without new boilers, given the weight calculation was wrong? It could certainly allow you to do some things, but honestly, you need new boilers and new turbines to really get her up to speed. And honestly, the big problem with the nail rods is that they are twin shaft. But let's be honest, if you were building a third nail rod because you lost HMS Revenge, that would probably be a free shaft ship. In which case, you would have a fast nail rod. In a bit, don't worry. I'm getting heckled by my food delivery person. They want me to help with putting the garden back together again, so I probably will finish this about past. So another 13 minutes. If the Battle of Gallipoli never happened, how would that have affected World War One? Matt Flattery, that's a good question. If it never happened, doesn't really affect World War One much, but it does probably have a big impact on post-World War One relations between Australia, New Zealand, and Britain, it does probably have an impact on what goes on in Turkey. It probably means that you have those forces involved from the beginning fighting kind of the way that the Allies eventually did fight the Ottomans, which is coming up through Egypt and all the way up the coast that way, rather than trying to land in Gallipoli. What other impact does it probably have? Honestly, not that much, but it might actually still believe the idea that you don't need specialist shells for attacking land targets. No, I don't have a image of Vanguard next to Akira for Akira for size comparison. Could be a new shirt idea. Can I turn? Why does the convenient Bergman for keeping expensive, outdated battleships around also seem to be visit Kirov class? Size! And the fact that most people just go, ooh, that's a big ship. Science was asking for the comparison between the RAN and RCN as the fighting capabilities today and after Type 26 comes online. RAN have LHDs and are going to have possibly nuclear subs. So RAN are probably slightly ahead of the RCN, but not by much. Christopher Ryan, would it make sense for small nations to invest in infrastructure to support their larger allies in time of war? Certainly if they expect them to be operating in their areas. It's always helpful if there's infrastructure there to build to work from. And how much? No, they wouldn't have offered. Basically, what the British would have done with the with the whole reactivation of the 4 Iowas, and if they had Vanguard, they'd have gone, well, we'll put Air Vanguard back into full readiness as well with our crew, and we'll be a 5th ship. So instead of you having just 4 Iowas, and that's all you have to manage, and you will technically have 5 available because you'll have a British task group. So there'll be 3 North Atlantic task groups built around 2 built around Iowas, 1 built around Vanguard. So we can always guarantee 1 at sea, 1 surface action group at sea, ready to fight. That would be the case. It'd be interesting to see how Vanguard would have got upgraded. On morale missions, I think the Naval Anti-Slavery Patrol would rank pretty high. Yes, but it was also good for crippling and certain economics as well, and economies. So there was definitely some self-interest in it. It was definitely enlightened self-interest going on. You'd also see Churchill continuing Admiralty, not going to 7 in trenches. That would have been interesting. What might have happened, we don't know. Let's look. So you're not going to get an Elroton to 28 knots in 1932. Not 28 knots, but if you can get it to 26 knots, then no, it's official speed to 26 knots. Remember, if it's real, its supposed speed was 23 knots. But if you can get the official speed to 26 knots, then let's be honest. What will the actual captains manage? Dalrymple Hamilton, for example. This ship can go 23 knots. I made it go 25. If this ship can go 26 knots, well, yeah. At which point there's probably a very squished Gneisenau at a certain point in World War II. Leaving that to one side, if you have Nelrod, which is built in the 1930s, but is built with 3 shafts and is built with slightly more power, and boilers and turbines in the 1930s, then you could well have a vessel which could do 28 plus knots. And that would be a very interesting vessel to have. USA, no, sorry, was the USA, we have nothing to counter this sort of thing, so we grab anything. Basically, it was nothing, we have nothing to counter this thing in terms of status of it showing up. It was about fighting the peace more than fighting the war. Well, I'd expect the KGBs on that scenario to be further evolved than Elrond's probably would have been. The interesting thing would be what guns would they have gone with. Probably would have gone with more 16-inch. In which case, you've got 16-inch guns in production. In which case, do you go with the 14-inch? I managed to get through 5 of the 8 books of today. That's quite good. I'll accept that. Especially as I now got to go sort out the garden. So, as said, a few more minutes and then I'll go. Oh God, squished Nizenal. Happy Nelrod. Well, poor Nelrod. Well, just it's a case of it's going fast enough. It's causing Nizenal has to go pull up to full speed to get away from it. If you got it going even a couple knots faster than it was then, was managing to go, then Nizenal probably doesn't get away from it. Oh, the bots have found us. Hello, bots. Thank you, Stafford. That's it. How do you stop the 14-inch King George V being built and get the triple 15-inch? Bonk Chatfield on the head and replace him with someone decent? That's about the only option. That's pretty much it. Let's Fox. So carrier is the real power in the fleet post World War II. The battleship has present. Yes. It does. And I thought if I put this up today, it would really distract them. Anyway, thank you, Sage. Take care. Thank you, everyone, for watching. As said, we've got a. I'll do a sort of about another 5-6 minutes, and then I'll be off because I've got to go help my sister with rebuilding her garden, which is falling apart. What effect had the 140 bucket Russian exercise in early 2022 had on the British naval thinking? We will see. Alzaski, thank you. Roruta, native submarine forces are probably licking their chops at such a juicy target. It's always nice to see it. DG40. Nice one. Send Chatfield on holiday, maybe. How do you feel? Wonder whether he'd go on a all expenses paid round the world cruise. That's the Fox. So, why does the British battleship still have that much presence, though? Here is the thing. So, if you put, how do I put it? Who can I put there? Okay. Let's say Elvis Presley appeared suddenly, and you had him standing next to One Direction. There are 5 of One Direction. Let's say they already formed all 5 One Direction there. They have a big following, but Elvis would have the presence. That's probably a bad thing. Could I use Elton John and some? That's what I'm sort of describing. They might not be as good as they once were. Elton John and Ed Sheeran. Okay, Ed Sheeran is by far the biggest star now. He has massive. But if the two walk into the room, everyone's eyes are drawn to Elton John before they're drawn to Ed Sheeran, because Elton John has presence. Because of Elton John, more than anything. That is what we're talking about. Its status, it's an X factor which you cannot necessarily place your finger on, but the subject of it will have presence. It will draw your eyes. Thank you. I will have fun gardening. Thank you in the Hell Shop. Thank you, Greg Starsky. Thank you. Thank you, Paul Burswick. Thank you, Stafford. Nice everyone. Nearly 10 at night. Wait till morning, I say. Nah, I'll get it done tonight. It's always easier to sort it out this evening, tonight, than leave it for tomorrow. Never leave tomorrow for tomorrow what you can do today. It's the safest way. Just had another message come through. Who's that from? I don't want a notification on that one. I'm not sure why they're sending me a notification for that. That was strange. Okay. Thank you, Walt92. Thank you, Night Hour Productions. Thank you, Vanguard. If Vanguard was kept, would the RN have tried to regun her with 16-inch guns so she could use the same ammo as the US battleships? It would depend if the funding was made available. If the funding was made available, they would. But if the funding wasn't, they've got plenty of 15-inch that they can just keep stored. Okay, any news on Type 83 article? Two perfectionists are writing a paper together. What do you think? It's going to get there. It'll get there. Take care, Rohwer. That's around. Then you're up in the shop till 1100, 20 till 11, building a desk. No, it's going to be a case of sort out the garden. I have got to do some major building work in the garden over next week. I've got to build a path. I've got all the slabs for that, and I've got the concrete for that, and the gravel. And I'm gonna stick a gravel run all along our fence line because, well, honestly, I think we need to from a drainage perspective. And yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun week before I go away to see more teenagers. Yes, and there is going to be a heatwave this weekend. I am going to be doing all this work in the heatwave. Take care, Stafford. Take care, bad guy. Thank you, Dev Squad. And I'll be recording all videos for you to cover, not of course this week coming, but the week after that. And the videos for this week. And of course, on Thursday, we'll be talking about cruiser actions in the Spanish-American War. That'll be fun. Take care, everyone. Have fun. Thank you for watching. And don't do anything I wouldn't do. I think it's the whole thing. But yes, thank you for all your support. I really wouldn't be anywhere and able to do anything I had done without you all and your support. So thank you. It really is critical. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Take care, Desert Foxo. Bye.